Chapter 803. Gu Beiwei was shoved aside by the shadow guard. He could have stood, but he still fell to the ground. The medicinal pills Long Fei Yi had given him had helped him recover 30% of his internal energy. Not only could he stand, but he could also use his lightness techniques to dodge. However, he would absolutely not expose himself again unless he had no other choice. Gu Beiwei collapsed to the ground, only to see 3 masked assassins dressed in black. The 10 shadow guards hiding in the shadows all appeared and began to fight with the 3 assassins. The taller shadow guard who'd shoved him aside retreated to his side to protect him. The 3 assassins all wielded long swords, and their swordsmanship far exceeded Gu Beiwei's expectations. Their every move was filled with an unstoppable sword aura. Even the 10 shadow guards couldn't gain the upper hand against them. They had only crossed swords for a short while, but the battle was already intense. The taller shadow guard could only gape at the sight. The 3 assassins' swordsmanship clearly came from Tianshan Kenzo. Judging from their sword aura, they must have cultivated Tianshan Kenzo's Nirvana hard arts. Who are they? If their swordsmanship could reach this level, they had to be disciples of the 2 depositories and courtyards of Celestial Mountain. His Highness Duke of Qin had long taken control of Tianshan Kenzo. Song Qiuzi's traders were all under control as well, so they couldn't have left the mountain. Even if they were Song Qiuzi's traders, why would they target Gu Beiwei? Gu Beiwei had no enmity with them. Currently, Gu Beiwei was staring at the fight with furrowed brows. The taller shadow guard stole a glance at Gu Beiwei and saw his stern expression. He knew this wasn't good. Based on the current situation, wouldn't Dr. Gu suspect His Highness Duke of Qin? Thinking up to here, a terrifying thought flashed through the taller shadow guard's mind. He couldn't help but shiver. Could it be that this assassin really was sent by His Highness Duke of Qin? Dr. Gu wasn't a simple person to begin with, and he even kept his cooperation with His Highness Duke of Qin a secret from esteemed Wang Fei. Was His Highness Duke of Qin planning to use him to take over Medical City and then cook him as a lackey? Objectively speaking, Dr. Gu had become His Highness Duke of Qin's strongest opponent after taking control of Medical City. Once Dr. Gu betrayed His Highness Duke of Qin and collaborated with other powers, His Highness Duke of Qin's plans would fall apart. Because dealing with Dr. Gu was far more difficult than dealing with Gu Yuntian. Gu Yuntian was a medical maniac, while Dr. Gu was a world-shaking genius. This swordsmanship is so familiar. Gu Beiwei's tone was calm and emotionless, but it scared the shadow guard. Why are you panicking? Gu Beiwei asked again. Dr. Gu, their swordsmanship. For a moment, the shadow guard didn't know how to explain. Just as Gu Beiwei was about to speak, the shadow guard abruptly pushed him aside. In the blink of an eye, a sword came whistling from behind them. Another assassin. That was close. The shadow guard threw caution to the wind. No matter who these assassins were, as long as he hadn't received any new orders from His Highness Duke of Qin, he had to carry out his old orders and protect Dr. Gu with his life. He and Gu Beiwei both turned around to see another masked assassin. However, unlike the black-robed assassin, this one wasn't wearing a mask. Instead, he wore a black hood that completely covered his face, revealing only his eyes. Other than that, it was impossible to tell that the person was a man. Dr. Gu's martial arts are far superior to the other 3. We can only run. The tall shadow guard was also a veteran of many battles. He saw through the situation at a glance. He grabbed Gu Beiwei and turned to flee toward the medical academy. Unfortunately, the black-robed assassin quickly landed in front of them. He raised his sword and pointed it at Gu Beiwei. Although he didn't make a sound, the murderous intent in his deep eyes was enough to show that he was determined to kill. Gu Beiwei narrowed his eyes and looked at him, not saying a word. Although he had only recovered 30% of his martial arts, his eyesight was as good as ever. He could see more clearly than the tall shadow guard. The 3 assassins were far more powerful than the 10 shadow guards. Soon, the outcome of the battle would be decided. Moreover, the man in front of them had superb martial arts skills, enough to be mentioned in the same breath as Long Fei. Where did these people come from, and why did they want to kill him? We can't escape. Think of a way to save him. Gu Beiwa whispered. The tall shadow guard hurriedly sent out a distress signal. First, he wanted to warn esteemed Wang Fei's shadow guard to be careful. Second, he wanted to ask the shadow guard in Medical City for help. As soon as the signal was sent out, the black-robed assassin attacked. With a wave of his sword, he sent out a wave of sword energy that could topple mountains and overturn seas. It was so powerful that it was impossible to escape. The tall shadow guard was stunned. Apart from the elders of Celestial Mountain and the old man from Kenzo, only His Highness Duke of Qin had such ability. Heavens, who was this black-robed assassin? The tall shadow guard couldn't dodge. In the blink of an eye, he turned around and grabbed Gu Beiwa as they fell to the ground, using his body to shield Gu Beiwa. The sword energy struck the tall shadow guard. He spat out a mouthful of blood, which splashed onto Gu Beiwa's shoulder and dyed his white robes red. Dr. Gu, let's go. Gu Beiwa knew that the black-robed assassin was powerful, but he didn't expect him to be this strong. He had only seen such powerful sword energy from Long Fei Yi before. He pushed the tall shadow guard. The tall shadow guard suddenly fell to the side, his eyes wide open. He was dead, Gu Beiwa frowned. He gently stroked the tall shadow guard's eyes to make him close his eyes. The 10 shadow guards were completely pinned down by the 3 assassins. Although they knew that this was a dangerous situation, they couldn't free themselves to protect Gu Beiwa. Gu Beiwa's gentle gaze gradually turned cold. He didn't run away. Instead, he coldly stared at the black-robed assassin and asked, "Who are you? What enmity do you have with me?" The black-robed assassin only sneered. He didn't answer and continued to inch closer to Gu Beiwa. Gu Beiwa began to retreat step by step, his heart filled with doubts. This black-robed assassin had attacked so ruthlessly and quickly, but now he wasn't in a hurry to attack. What was his goal? Do we know each other? Gu Beiwa probed again. The black-robed assassin still didn't speak. Gu Beiwa coldly laughed. This one is familiar with your Heaven Mountain sword style. Once these words were said, the black-robed assassin suddenly stopped. Gu Beiwa saw this and didn't know what to think. His eyes suddenly narrowed. He was about to speak when the black-robed assassin suddenly raised his sword. Gu Beiwa decisively retreated. It looked like he only took one step back, but his figure blurred and he instantly distanced himself from the black-robed assassin. Yes, he used the shadow technique. The black-robed assassin looked at him from afar. His eyes flashed with a trace of satisfaction. He immediately chased after him. Gu Beiwa turned and ran. Because 30% of his internal energy couldn't support him for long, he could only use it once or twice. He had to use the remaining energy on the blade. Very quickly, he felt the murderous sword chi behind him. He suddenly stopped. Just as the sword chi was about to hit his back, he suddenly shifted his position and narrowly avoided it. Although he avoided it, but he fell to the ground. Shifting his position twice had used up quite a bit of his internal energy. He didn't know if he could still hold on. He didn't have time to think and quickly got up, because the sword chi behind him was already closing in. Unexpectedly, when he raised his head, he saw Han Yunxi standing not far in front of him. Her face was filled with shock as she looked at him. Gu Beiwa did not expect this and was stunned. Han Yunxi also stood there in a daze. The two of them looked at each other. The distance between them was less than 20 steps, but it was like they were separated by thousands of rivers and mountains. They were so far apart that they were like strangers who had never met each other. Han Yunxi clearly saw his shadow technique just now. The sword chi came from Gu Beiwa's back. The sword chi was large and filled with murderous intent, but it was ignored by the two of them. White-robed gentleman, Han Yunxi murmured, her voice so low that Gu Beiwa couldn't hear her. Miss Yunxi, Gu Beiwa had thousands of things he wanted to say, but they were stuck in his throat. Even his words were so soft that only he could hear them. She trusted him so much, but he was hiding things from her? He was so loyal, but she didn't know his difficulties. Lil Thing rushed over and grabbed Gu Beiyue's trousers to remind him to dodge. Lil Thing hadn't recovered yet, or else it would have knocked its gentleman aside long ago. Fortunately, Chu Shifeng strode over and pulled Gu Beiyue away. At the same time, Su Donglin did the same to Han Yunxi. Whoosh! There was a loud sound as the sword Qi shot out like Ho Yi's arrow. It whistled through the air and crashed into the cliff in front of them, shattering a corner of the boulder. Qi! Lil Thing suddenly cried out in alarm, pointing anxiously at the dark-robed assassin as if it knew who he was. Celestial Mountain Sword Arts. Su Donglin blurted out. Han Yunxi didn't even have time to figure out Gu Beiyue's identity because she was even more stunned by the sword Qi. She didn't know martial arts, but she remembered how powerful the sword Qi Long Fei Yi had used against the old Kenzo in Tianshan Kenzo. She knew very few people in the world could produce such sword Qi. Who was this dark-robed man? Why did he want to kill Gu Beiyue? Gu Beiyue shook his head. Even though he forced himself to stay calm, he couldn't hide the panic and confusion in his eyes. He'd bitterly guarded his secret for so many years. Now that she knew his identity as a member of the Shadow Clan, what would she think? How was he supposed to protect her in the future? Lil Thing jumped from Gu Beiyue's body to Han Yunxi's and tugged at her sleeve to get her attention. Its claws kept pointing at the dark-robed assassin, as if it wanted to tell Han Yunxi something. By now, the three assassins had already taken care of the Shadow Guard and landed behind the dark-robed assassin to face off against Han Yunxi's group. Who are you? Han Yunxi asked coldly. The dark-robed man didn't answer, but intentionally avoided her gaze. With a wave of his hand, the three assassins attacked with their swords. Retreat, Chu Shifeng said decisively. Although they'd brought 10 or so shadow guards with them, this dark-robed assassin was enough to take on all of them. They had no chance of winning, so their only chance was to escape. Chu Shifeng had long been thinking the same thing. Esteemed Wang Fei, let's go first, quick. If we're leaving together. Han Yunxi refused immediately. She quickly grabbed Gu Beiyue's hand and looked into his eyes. No matter who you are, you have to leave with me. You owe me an explanation. Gu Beiyue looked at her stubborn gaze as a warm smile rose to his lips. It was obviously a doting smile, but it made one's heart ache for him. He suddenly broke free from her grip and avoided her gaze as well. Chapter 804. Chu Shifeng, split up and take esteemed Wang Fei away as fast as you can. Gu Beiyue wasn't sure whether the dark-robed man was after him or Han Yunxi. In this emergency, Han Yunxi's safety came first. Whether it was the white-robed gentleman or Dr. Gu, they all wanted Han Yunxi to be safe. Gu Beiyue finished speaking and ran off in a different direction. Almost at the same time, the assassins rushed over and scattered the shadow guards who were guarding them. Chu Shifeng's heart grew alarmed when he saw the dark-robed assassin looking at them. He immediately pulled Han Yunxi away and ordered a few shadow guard to cover their retreat. They didn't have enough men, so Gu Beiyue only had Su Donglin to protect him. They split up, but the dark-robed assassin didn't hesitate to chase after Gu Beiyue. Lil Thing was the fastest to react. It jumped off Han Yunxi's body and chased after the assassin like an arrow. It jumped onto his body and began to bite him. Unfortunately, Lil Thing had suffered severe injuries on Celestial Mountain and had yet to recover. All it could do was bite wildly. It tasted fresh blood as soon as it bit into the dark-robed assassin's flesh, giving it a start. The dark-robed assassin slapped Lil Thing viciously to the ground. Lil Thing stared blankly at the assassin's retreating form for a long time before it recovered its senses. It chased after him again, but didn't dare to get too close. Instead, it chased after Gu Beiyue. His target is Gu Beiyue. Chu Shifeng, you guys hurry over there, quick. Han Yunxi was about to lose her mind. She'd shot a few poison needles, but to no avail. But Chu Shifeng didn't budge. He even dragged Han Yunxi away. Han Yunxi was furious. She crouched down and forced herself to stop. Chu Shifeng, I'm ordering you to save him. The black-clothed assassin's target was not her, but Gu Beiyue. She could tell that Gu Beiyue's shadow technique was not as good as before. Otherwise, he would have escaped with her. One had to know that in the sinkhole, she had seen the power of his shadow technique. Esteemed Princess Consort, no one can be certain that his target is only Gu Beiwe. We don't have enough people right now, so you must leave first. Once you're safe, this subordinate will immediately come over to support you. Just then, we've already sent out the rescue signal. Reinforcements will be here soon, Chu Shifeng coaxed. I order you to go there immediately. Han Yunshi roared. An expert like the black-clothed assassin could easily kill Gu Beiwe and Su Donglin. Was he supposed to wait for reinforcements to arrive to collect their corpses? Chu Shifeng's martial arts skills were the best of all the Shadow Guard members. If he went to save them, he might be able to hold out until reinforcements arrived. Chu Shifeng was still hesitating when Han Yunshi rose to her feet and grabbed him by the collar. If anything happens to Gu Beiwe, this Wang Fei won't forgive you. Esteemed Princess Consort, Chu Shifeng was still hesitant. His Highness Duke of Qin needed him to do many important things, but ever since the incident at Carefree City, His Highness Duke of Qin had ordered him to stay by esteemed Wang Fei's side and protect her at all times. He was going to arrange for esteemed Wang Fei to go back tonight, so he couldn't let esteemed Wang Fei be in any danger. Esteemed Wang Fei wanted to stay at the poison sect tonight, but he had persuaded her to come back. They had only seen the rescue signal on their way back and met up with Gu Beiwe. If they hadn't run into each other by chance, he wouldn't have let esteemed Wang Fei see any of this. While Chu Shifeng was still hesitating, Su Donglin was sent flying by the sword Qi and slammed to the ground. He spat up a few mouthfuls of blood and tried to stand up, but in the end lost consciousness. Gu Beiwe was facing off against the black-robed assassin by himself. Chu Shifeng was anxious as well. With a single glance, the shadow guards by his side chased after the assassin and surrounded him. Gu Beiwe looked over and shouted at Han Yunshi.
Go!
Hurry! He himself fled in the opposite direction, but the black-robed assassin's sword suddenly picked up speed and cut down the shadow guards blocking his way. Then he continued to chase after Gu Beiwe. Gu Beiwe used his lightness techniques again and quickly vanished into the darkness. The black-robed assassin chased after him until his figure disappeared as well. If you won't go, I'll go. Han Yunshi grew fierce as she broke free of Chu Shifeng's grip. It was obvious who was stronger and who was weaker. Gu Beiwe was alone, so he'd die without a doubt. Unfortunately, Han Yunshi hadn't taken more than a few steps before Chu Shifeng blocked her way again. Esteemed Wang Fei, it's dangerous, you. Just who are these assassins? You know them? Han Yunshi demanded angrily. Chu Shifeng was astonished. Esteemed Wang Fei, they might know Celestial Mountain sword skills, but they definitely weren't sent by His Highness Duke of Qin. That black-robed assassin couldn't be His Highness Duke of Qin either. Esteemed Wang Fei, how could you? I didn't say he was Long Fei Yi. Han Yunshi fumed. Chu Shifeng's heart gave a lurch as he realized he'd said the wrong thing. Actually, he had his suspicions too. The black-robed man's sword skills were far too similar to His Highness Duke of Qin's. He didn't want to kill esteemed Wang Fei at all, but only wanted to kill Gu Beiwe. That was even more suspicious. After all, the medical academy was now split between the medical sect and poison sect. Gu Beiwe wasn't in charge of medical city, but the medical sect, while esteemed Wang Fei was in charge of the poison sect. In other words, she controlled half of the medical academy. Esteemed Wang Fei was also the mistress of the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate. Her life was worth much more than Gu Beiwe's. Logically speaking, any enemy would want esteemed Wang Fei's life first. But this assassin didn't harbor any enmity towards esteemed Wang Fei. Chu Shifeng knew Gu Beiwe's identity, but His Highness Duke of Qin had once sent Gu Beiwe multiple secret letters to discuss important matters. He wasn't aware of any of them. His Highness Duke of Qin and Gu Beiwe had worked together in the past, so he had no idea either. Esteemed Wang Fei, Chu Shifeng didn't know how to explain himself. Even he felt like he was trying to hide 300 taels of silver here. Actually, Han Yunshi didn't suspect Long Fei Yi at all. She didn't have time to think too much about it. She didn't suspect anyone easily, much less jump to conclusions. She only suspected Chu Shifeng to provoke him into action. Coldly, she cut him off. If it's not Long Fei Yi, then go save him right now. Chu Shifeng still didn't move. Han Yunxi was so angry that she almost spat up blood. Alright, I never expected Long Fei Yi to be this kind of person. Do you want to cross the river and investigate the bridge? If he wants to kill Gu Beiwa today, does that mean he'll kill this Wang Fei tomorrow as well? Chu Shifeng couldn't take it anymore. If this really caused a misunderstanding, he wouldn't be able to bear the responsibility, even if he died. Seeing that the remaining shadow guards were still being held back by the 3 assassins, he didn't dare to leave esteemed Wang Fei behind. He could only take her with him and chase after them. But by the time they arrived, Gu Beiwa had already been forced to the edge of a cliff by the dark-robed assassin. The assassin stabbed forward with his sword, leaving Gu Beiwa with nowhere to run. He stepped on empty air. Don't. Han Yunxi's don't was a cry in her heart. The sight before her left her mouth agape, but she couldn't make a sound. How scared must she be so scared that she couldn't even make a sound? Chu Shifeng finally threw caution to the wind and threw himself over, but it was too late, too late. Gu Beiwa missed his footing and fell straight down. Gu Beiwa! Han Yunxi finally let out a sound that sounded like a miserable sob, echoing through the entire mountain forest. She threw caution to the wind and rushed over, but the dark-robed assassin suddenly flew into the air and landed on the ground, avoiding her. Han Yunxi rushed to the edge of the cliff and saw the moonlight beneath her feet. Below her was a bottomless abyss that was even darker than the sky pit. Gu Beiwa! Gu Beiwa! You owe me an explanation. Gu Beiwa! Her lips were trembling as her entire body shook. She was on the verge of losing control, but Chu Shifeng caught her in time. Otherwise, she might have toppled over. She struggled free of Chu Shifeng and glared at him. It's all your fault. At this moment, shadows flew down one by one. It was the Shadow Guard. Reinforcements had arrived. 3 black-robed men landed behind the dark-robed assassin, who sheathed his sword. Han Yunxi glared at him and saw the wound on his shoulder, where Lil Thing had bitten him. It was bleeding profusely. Chu Shifeng's heart felt stifled, but he still stood in front of Han Yunxi to protect her. At the same time, he shot a look at the leader of the Shadow Guard. Even though they had the numbers advantage, they were no match for these assassins. That dark-robed assassin's sword skills were comparable to His Highness Duke of Qin's. Even if another group of Shadow Guard came, they still wouldn't be able to take them down. Thus, their top priority was to protect esteemed Wang Fei. Han Yunxi looked at the dark-robed assassin and narrowed her eyes. Once again, the dark-robed assassin avoided her gaze and backed up a few steps before turning to leave. The 3 assassins brought up the rear and quickly left as well. The Shadow Guards didn't chase after them. Han Yunxi glanced at Chu Shifeng and didn't have them do the same. After confirming that the assassins had left, Chu Shifeng didn't hesitate to jump into the abyss to search for them. The Shadow Guards all chased after him, leaving only a few to guard Han Yunxi. Compared to her previous loss of control, Han Yunxi was terrifyingly calm now. Her gaze was fixed on the abyss, as if her soul had been sucked away by the darkness. The Shadow Guards exchanged glances, not daring to speak. Actually, even someone like Chu Shifeng would have to tread carefully down such a deep abyss, to say nothing of Gu Beiwa. Gu Beiwa had no chance of survival. The tranquil moonlight spilled over the cliffs, shrouding everything in a soundless world. No one noticed that Lil Thing had disappeared. Han Yunxi's mind was a blank. Everything that had happened tonight had been too sudden, whether it was Gu Beiwa's identity, the assassin's sword skills, or the abyss. She didn't want to think about anything except that Chu Shifeng could bring Gu Beiwa up. No matter how long she waited in the darkness, she could still wait for daybreak. Then, would she be able to wait for hope and wait for that man who was as gentle as an April spring breeze? That man had once told her in her most helpless moment, "Miss Yunxi, don't be afraid." But now her entire heart was trembling. She was afraid. Very soon, all of the Shadow Guards that Long Fei Yi had hidden in Medical City arrived and headed for the abyss in waves. It was almost daybreak, but Han Yunxi's gaze was still fixed on the abyss. Would she wake up from her nightmares at daybreak? Gu Beiwei was in such a big mess, but Gu was still clueless. Currently, he had just left the Nine Lives Hall, his face weary. Mu Ling, who was waiting by the door, quickly approached him. Chi brother, hurry and bathe and change your clothes before you catch any of the infectious diseases inside. Gu creased his brows at Mu Ling, before laughing out loud. Lass, you're so cute. It'd be great if he could catch an infectious disease. Abruptly, Luo Zuishan came to find him. Xiao Qi, something's happened to Dr. Gu. He's on the western cliff of the Poison Sect's Forbidden Grounds. Hurry and go take a look. Chapter 805. By the time Gu and Mu Ling arrived at the Poison Sect's Forbidden Grounds, it was already daybreak. Han Yunxi was still sitting on the edge of the cliff, staring blankly at the abyss. Last night, she'd seen the abyss with the help of the moonlight, but it was bottomless after daybreak. Chu Shifeng was still searching for people below with a large group of shadow guards. Occasionally, someone would come up to report the situation. Han Yunxi only listened without a word. Gu Qixiao's heart ached at the sight of Han Yunxi's dejected figure, but he didn't know what to do. Han Yunxi, just what happened last night? Can Dr. Gu still be saved? She asked anxiously. Luo Zuishan hadn't told them much on their way here, only that Han Yunxi's group had been attacked last night and that Gu Beiwei had fallen off the cliff. Han Yunxi recovered her wits and glanced at Mu Ling, before returning her gaze to the abyss. She didn't say a word. At this moment, Chu Shifeng arrived. Mu Ling quickly asked, Guard Chu, just what's going on? Have you found Dr. Gu yet? Chu Shifeng sighed. This abyss is too deep. The top half is all cliffs and bare walls, but the middle is full of large trees and boulders. We spent an entire night searching through all of them, but didn't find Dr. Gu. Then we went further down. Chu Shifeng glanced at esteemed Wang Fei. Although he was afraid, he still spoke the truth. Currently, we've only found the middle part of the abyss. We haven't reached the bottom yet, but we can hear the sound of water. The sound is very rapid. There should be a stream at the bottom of the abyss, but we don't know how deep it is. Now that our line of sight is clear, this subordinate has already sent people down to scout ahead. This subordinate. Chu Shifeng looked timidly towards esteemed Wang Fei. This subordinate will come up to report. Then, Mu Ling, eyes turned red. Then Dr. Gu's done for. Dr. Gu's such a good person, so how? Mu Ling, I would never forget how much Gu Beiwei had taken care of her when she first joined Pill Fiend Pharmacy. Later, Gu Beiwei went to treat Grand Concubine Yi at the Duke of Qin's estate, leaving her to manage Pill Fiend Pharmacy on her own. Gu Beiwei had done so many things for her in secret. Actually, after Han Yunxi and Long Fei ascended Celestial Mountain, Gu Beiwei had taken care of everything from Pill Fiend Pharmacy to the Commander-in-Chief's estate to the Duke of Qin's estate. Others might not know how hard it was for him, but she knew it clearly. Such a gentle person, such a kind-hearted person, such a quiet person. He pitied all the pitiful people around him. How did he become a pitiful person?
No.
Doctor won't die.
He won't.
Mu Ling, a shot to her feet and flew towards the abyss. I'll go look too. I have to find him. Gu Beiwei finally walked over. He crouched down and stuffed the canteen into Han Yunxi's hands before giving her a long look. Without a word, he flew down and chased after Mu Ling. Few people were loyal to him, but Gu Beiwei was one of them. Gu Beiwei had called him Xiao Qi. Just for that, he'd find the man even if he had to climb a mountain of swords or swim through a sea of flames. Chu Shifeng wanted to speak, but stopped himself. He'd rather esteemed Wang Fei scold him and interrogate him instead of staying so quiet like this. He didn't regret protecting esteemed Wang Fei last night instead of saving Gu Beiwei, but that didn't mean he didn't feel pained. He wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he resolutely jumped down and continued to search. It wasn't until noon that Gu Beiwei's group returned to the cliff. Mu Ling, couldn't help but sob. Gu Beiwei didn't say a word, so Chu Shifeng bowed his head and reported the situation. Esteemed Wang Fei, There's a river at the bottom of the abyss. The shallowest part is still as deep as a person. The current is very fast. Our people searched for a long time but found nothing. This subordinate had them keep going downstream. You knew long ago that Gu Beiwe was a descendant of the Shadow Clan? Han Yunxi cut him off. Gu Beiwe and Mu Ling were both surprised. Gu Beiwe was the white-robed gentleman they'd met at the Sky Pit? They both looked towards Chu Shifeng. Chu Shifeng had already sent a message to His Highness Duke of Qin last night, but he hadn't received a reply yet. He had no idea how His Highness Duke of Qin would handle the situation. Faced with esteemed Wang Fei's scrutinizing gaze, he knew he couldn't escape. If he lied, it'd only make it harder for His Highness Duke of Qin to explain himself. He bowed his head and replied honestly, "Yes. So Long Fei you knew long ago too?" Han Yunxi's voice was tinged with anger. After a while, Chu Shifeng nodded. "Yes. Then what kind of person am I?" Han Yunxi's temper finally flared up. The white-robed gentleman's appearance had made her suspect her own identity. She'd even discussed it with Long Fei Yi multiple times, but she never expected Gu Beiwe to be the white-robed gentleman. Long Fei Yi had known all along, but kept it from her. Chu Shifeng hastened to explain. Esteemed Wang Fei, it was Dr. Gu himself who wanted to keep this a secret. No wonder His Highness, Duke of Qin. Dr. Gu said he was the only remaining member of the Shadow Clan. He didn't know if the Western Qin imperial heir was still alive, nor did he want to search for them. Nor did he want to become the Chu clan's running dog. He said he had a special status and didn't want to stir up trouble. He only wanted to quietly stay as a doctor at Pilfine Pharmacy. That's why he begged His Highness Duke of Qin to keep this a secret for him. Esteemed Wang Fei, this is Dr. Gu's private affairs. If he doesn't want you to know, there's nothing His Highness Duke of Qin can do about it, right? In the end, Chu Shifeng's heart was still with his master. Han Yunxi wasn't afraid of being the Western Qin imperial heir, but she was afraid of lies and conspiracies. After hearing Chu Shifeng's explanation, she calmed down and asked, "How did Long Fei find out? When did he find out?" His Highness has always been suspicious of Dr. Gu. After all, esteemed Wang Fei was close to him. His Highness was worried about esteemed Wang Fei's safety, so he investigated multiple times. Then in Western Zhou, Chu Shifeng explained how Gu Beiwe had been seriously injured by the Chu clan and taken hostage. Han Yunxi finally understood everything, including how Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiwe had teamed up to subdue Chu Shifeng to deal with Ning Cheng. Does Ning Cheng know of Gu Beiwe's identity? Han Yunxi asked next. His Highness already interrogated him. Chu Shifeng didn't say anything, nor did the two elders of the Chu clan. Ning Cheng shouldn't know, or else he wouldn't have let Dr. Gu off so easily. Chu Shifeng saw esteemed Wang Fei's lonely expression and was afraid that she wouldn't believe him. He hastened to explain. Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness only found out about Dr. Gu's identity after multiple investigations. If Dr. Gu hadn't been seriously injured by the Chu clan, His Highness wouldn't have known his secret either. It really was Dr. Gu who told His Highness to hide the truth from you. Esteemed Wang Fei, aside from this subordinate, none of the Shadow Guard knows of Dr. Gu's identity. His Highness really is. Han Yunxi interrupted again. Cold, she said. If it wasn't Ning Cheng, then who wanted to kill him? That person from last night clearly knew of his identity. Hearing this, Chu Shifeng's heart finally settled back into his chest after an entire night of suspense. Fortunately, esteemed Wang Fei hadn't gone into a dead end over Gu Beiwe's identity. Otherwise, even His Highness Duke of Qin wouldn't have been able to explain himself. Chu Shifeng sighed with emotion in his heart. It's no wonder His Highness Duke of Qin has taken a fancy to her. She's different from those unreasonable women. Chu Shifeng secretly rejoiced, but he had no idea how sad Han Yunxi was feeling. She respected Gu Beiwe's privacy, but why was Gu Beiwe hiding it from her when even Long Fei Yi knew? She felt like an outsider who'd been excluded from Gu Beiwe and Long Fei Yi's circle. Despite her sadness, Han Yunxi didn't blame him. After all, Everyone had their own secrets and choices. Just like her transmigrating to this world and her detox system. She smiled bitterly in her heart. Now it looked like Gu Beiwei didn't need to give her an explanation at all. What right did she have to talk to him like that last night? But even if he didn't need to give her an explanation, he still had to come back alive and well. Gu Beiwei, do you know that Yunqi still owes you a thank you? You risked your life to save Jun Yixie's humiliation, leaving her in a sorry state after wrapping her in white robes. She fought with Long Fei Yi and injured her shoulder. While she was sleeping soundly, you quietly bandaged her up and left her medicine without leaving a name. Gu Beiwei, you have to admit what you've done. Chu Shifeng seized the chance to explain. Esteemed Wang Fei, last night that person used Celestial Mountain's sword techniques, but it definitely wasn't His Highness Duke of Qin. Before he could finish, Gu grabbed him by the collar. What did you say? Han Yunqi pried his hand away and explained last night's events. Gu mocked. With such formidable sword skills, Long Fei Yi should have recognized him. Gu had just found out that Gu Beiwei was a member of the Shadow Clan. On the surface, he looked just as surprised as Mu Ling. But his heart was filled with waves of shock. He recalled Mute Granny. He never understood why Long Fei Yi had killed Mute Granny. Besides Mu Yingdong and Lady Lianxin, Mute Granny was the only person who knew about Han Yunqi's origins. Long Fei Yi had killed Mute Granny to silence her. Long Fei Yi hadn't hidden his identity as a member of the poison sect from Han Yunqi, so what was he hiding by killing Mute Granny? Gu Beiwei had been well-behaved for years in Tianning's Imperial Physician Courtyard. If he really wanted to live a peaceful life, why would he have volunteered to be Pill Fiend Pharmacy's resident doctor? Why would he participate in the medical skills competition in such a high-profile manner and take control of Medical City as the head of a faction? A frightening thought rose in Gu's mind, causing his teeth to clench. But he didn't say it aloud. He prayed that Gu Beiwei was the same as him, an exception to everything else. Everything he'd done was because he couldn't control his feelings for this woman. There were no other ulterior motives. Long Fei Yi is still recuperating on Celestial Mountain. His injuries are very serious, so it'll take him at least a year or so to recover. It couldn't have been him last night, Han Yunqi intoned. Chu Shifeng immediately broke out in cold sweat. Although His Highness Duke of Qin hadn't given him any instructions, he felt that he had to say everything. Otherwise, the misunderstanding would grow too big. Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness Duke of Qin left Celestial Mountain ages ago. His Highness Duke of Qin is at Sandy River right now. He's going to personally lead the troops against Ningcheng. Everyone fell silent at Chu Shifeng's words. Han Yunqi's expression froze on her face. After a while, she muttered, Chu Shifeng, what did you say? Chapter 806. Han Yunqi couldn't believe her ears. The man she missed and worried about every day had lied to her like this. Every day, she worried about Long Fei Yi's injuries and hoped that she could finish dealing with Medical City as soon as possible. Every day, she tried to figure out how to balance the power of the South Central region's aristocratic families so she could return to Celestial Mountain in one piece and take care of him. But he'd long recovered and left Celestial Mountain. He'd long taken control of the South Central region's commander-in-chief's estate and was about to go to war. But she was still in the dark. Long Fei Yi, what kind of person do you think I, Han Yunqi, am? An idiot? Even Chu Shifeng, the head of the Shadow Guard, knew the truth. What did she count for? She finally understood why Long Fei kept sending her empty letters. Faced with her missing him, what else could he do besides sending her empty letters? Seeing esteemed Wang Fei's strange expression, Chu Shifeng's heart pounded so hard that it was about to leap out of his chest. He looked towards Gu and Mu Ling, only to see one stunned and the other expressionless. They couldn't help him. What else could Chu Shifeng do besides brace himself and explain? Esteemed Wang Fei, Dr. Gu knows about this too. Don't use Gu Beiwei as the bad guy. Han Yunqi was furious. We don't even know if he's dead or alive, but you still won't let him go. Gu Beiwei had absolute power over the Shadow Clan. But Celestial Mountain, the South Central Region's commander-in-chief's estate, and the war were all Long Fei Ye's own affairs. He lied to her. It had nothing to do with Gu Beiyue. Chu Shifeng fell to his knees. Esteemed Wang Fei, please calm your anger. His Highness has his own difficulties. Esteemed Wang Fei, you know that Nine Xian Palace has spies who never knew His Highness had left the mountain. His Highness only lied to you because he wanted to hide it from the spies. Esteemed Wang Fei, think about it carefully. In the letter His Highness sent you, did he only mention his injuries, Tianshan Mountain, and the Commander-in-Chief's manor in the south, and not mention Medical City at all? Also, in the letter Your Highness sent to Dr. Gu, did you only mention Medical City and not Tianshan Mountain and the Commander-in-Chief's manor? Chu Shifeng couldn't help but kowtow, hoping to calm his mistress's anger. He continued, Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness has always suspected that the spies in Celestial Mountain and the Duke of Qin's estate are related to Northern Li. He set up this trap for the sake of today's battle. Northern Li's cavalry has not yet recovered, and His Highness intends to take this opportunity to attack Ningcheng and directly attack Northern Li.
Catch them off guard.
Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness has already told Dr. Gu to send you out of Medical City last night. His Highness has been thinking about you and has been waiting for you at Sand River. Who knew that last night? Chu Shifeng spoke from the bottom of his heart and lungs, revealing everything he knew about the situation. So his injuries on Celestial Mountain were all an act to trick me too? Han Yunxi asked in disbelief. She'd cried herself hoarse then. How could Long Fei Yi be so ruthless? Esteemed Wang Fei, if it wasn't for that act, how could the spies have believed His Highness was seriously injured? Chu Shifeng retorted. Then why did Bailey Mingxiang go to Celestial Mountain? Han Yunxi asked next. This esteemed Wang Fei, although His Highness wasn't seriously injured, he was still injured. Dr. Gu didn't lie when he told Miss Bailey to go up the mountain for acupuncture treatment. Actually, Chu Shifeng didn't know about the dual cultivation incident either. So he's fully recovered now? Han Yunxi asked coldly. No matter how angry she was, she still missed that man. He only left the mountain after he recovered. Esteemed Wang Fei, this subordinate has already reported last night's events to His Highness. Those people last night weren't simple, so Medical City isn't safe anymore. This subordinate will send you to Sand River to see His Highness first. He'll definitely explain everything to you. Chu Shifeng coaxed. I won't leave Medical City until I find Gu Beiyue. Han Yunxi was resolute. Chu Shifeng panicked. But, although he didn't want to say it, he had no choice. Esteemed Wang Fei, Dr. Gu's odds are against him. You, Han Yunxi, could tell what Chu Shifeng meant. Stealing her heart, she said coldly, If he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse. Esteemed Wang Fei, you. Chu Shifeng kowtowed again. Esteemed Wang Fei, this subordinate swears with my life and all of the Shadow Guard's lives that the assassins last night were His Highness, Duke of Qin. Chu Shifeng, listen to me. I don't suspect him. Han Yunxi made her stance clear. That's right. Even now, Han Yunxi had never suspected Long Fei Yi. She would personally demand an explanation from him for his deceit. But that had nothing to do with last night's assassination attempt. Her heart was aching to death, but her mind was clear. Everything about the assassin last night was extremely similar to Long Fei Ye's. The assassin's swordsmanship skills, his silent style, his lack of reaction to Gu Beiyue's shadow arts, his purposeful avoidance of her gaze, and his lack of enmity all pointed to Long Fei Yi. But they lacked a reason to kill Gu Beiyue no matter what. Ever since they'd arrived at Celestial Mountain, Gu Beiyue had been Long Fei Ye's most capable assistant. His cooperation with Long Fei Yi was extremely important, so what reason did Long Fei Yi have to kill Gu Beiyue? Chu Shifeng felt as if he'd been granted amnesty. He didn't know what to say but kept kowtowing. Esteemed Wang Fei is wise and brilliant. Esteemed Wang Fei is wise and brilliant. Han Yunxi took a deep breath and told herself to calm down. Actually, she didn't want to calm down at all. Gu Beiyue's death made her so miserable that she wanted to cry. Long Fei's lies made her so angry that she wanted to rush to his face and demand answers. But she had no time to feel sad or angry. She told herself to calm down. Last night's assassin clearly had ill intentions. If she didn't calm down, she'd definitely fall into a trap. Even if she had to pay the price for Gu's sake, for the sake of Gu Beiyue's hard-earned position as academy head, she had to force herself to calm down. She glanced at Luo Zuishan and said cold, "Elder Luo, go tell Vice Academy head Shen to hurry to the study and wait for me. Dr. Gu's fall off the cliff must be kept a secret." Luo Zuishan knew the severity of the situation and quickly left to carry out her orders. "Poison lass, leave the search to me." Gu's face was taut as he hid all his thoughts. It was rare for him to be so serious. "Seventh young master, please protect esteemed Wang Fei." Last night's assassin's martial arts were on par with His Highness Duke of Qin. "Only you can protect esteemed Wang Fei now," Chu Shifeng said urgently. Gu laughed coldly. Han Yunxi felt helpless and said, "If that person wanted to take my life last night, would I still be standing here?" Chu Shifeng felt resentful, but had no words to retort. Muling suddenly exclaimed, "Han Yunxi, where's Lil Thing?" "Lil Thing likes Dr. Gu the most. It'll definitely be able to find Dr. Gu. I hope it can find him too." Han Yunxi sighed heavily, then told Gu, "Old fiend, I can't summon Lil Thing. It's very far away from me." After realizing that Lil Thing was missing, Han Yunxi had been trying to summon it from her poison storage space. Unfortunately, she hadn't been able to summon it. This meant that Lil Thing was very far away from her and out of range. She wasn't sure if Lil Thing had gone to chase after the assassins or Gu Beiyue. She'd rather Lil Thing had foolishly chased after the assassins. If that was the case, then there was still hope to find Gu Beiyue. But if Lil Thing had gone to chase after Gu Beiyue, Han Yunxi didn't dare to think any further. Gu understood her meaning and muttered, "Find him no matter how far away he is." Then he flew back into the abyss. Muling hesitated before grabbing Han Yunxi's hand and squeezing it. "Han Yunxi, Dr. Gu is the best person. He'll definitely be fine." So speaking, she flew down to chase after Gu Qishao. Han Yunxi sniffed and said to Chu Shifeng, "Let's go back to Medical City." Back to Medical City, they'd hide last night's events and stabilize the situation. Then they'd continue Gu Beiyue's unfinished business and cooperate with the Long Fei's campaign at Sandy River. On the way back, Han Yunxi even asked Chu Shifeng what she should do for Gu Beiyue so she could continue cooperating with the Long Fei's plans. She was frightened by her own calm. She'd always been a rational person, but never knew she could be this rational. This wasn't rationality at all, but stupidity. She was easy to bully. She knew that the reason she was so rational was because the person she was dealing with was him, the Long Fei. Her greatest rationality was, in fact, irrationality. "Long Fei, do you know? Even though my heart hurts, I still miss you. I want to see you and be by your side." By the time Han Yunxi reached Gu Beiyue's study and was about to discuss with Shun Jueming how to hide Gu Beiyue's ambush, a piece of news shattered all of her rationality and irrationality. News of the battle at Sandy River had arrived. Last night, the Bailey army had launched a surprise attack on Tianning. In one night, 3 armies had successfully crossed the fierce waters of Sandy River and killed their way into Tianning territory. Ning Cheng's troops were caught off guard and were defeated one by one. By this morning, they'd lost 2 cities and retreated to the largest city in Tianning's southern regions, South Xiao Prefecture. The Ning clan troops took advantage of the terrain and deployed all of their red coat cannons to defend the city. Only then did they manage to maintain a stalemate with the Bailey army. The Bailey army had been able to cross the river in one night only because they'd mobilized a mermaid army to control the Sandy River's waters. News of last night's battle had spread throughout Cloud Realm continent by this morning. No one expected the Bailey Navy to be the legendary mermaid army. But that wasn't the most shocking part. The most shocking part was the Bailey army's flag, a large coiling dragon with white characters on a black background. Long Fei Yi was Tianning's Duke of Qin, so he'd once personally used a black flag with a strong white Qin character on it. After all, The great Qin Empire's East and West imperial clans both had the same Qin character on their flags. Western Qin's flag had black characters on a white background, while East Qin's had white characters on a black background. The only difference between Long Fei's flag and the East Qin's was the coiling dragon totem on the back. This time, the Bailey Navy's flag wasn't Tianning's Duke of Qin's flag, but the East Qin imperial clans. The same coiling dragon was engraved on the back. Bailey Yuanlong publicly announced that the Bailey clan was not only a mermaid clan, but also a member of the 7 noble families, the Bai clan, who had been loyal to the East Qin imperial clan for generations. He also exposed the Ning clan's relationship with Cloud Realm Trade Consortium and revealed that the Ning clan was the Di clan, one of the 7 noble families who'd been missing for many years. Long Fei's battle was the start of a war against the Di clan in the name of the East Qin imperial clan. Chapter 807. After learning of Long Fei's true identity, Han Yunxi sat there in a daze, unable to recover her senses for a long time. Shen Jueming knitted his brows in worry, while Luo Zuishan's expression was gloomy and furious. To them, this news was too sudden and shocking. Meanwhile, Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin stood on one side with their heads bowed, afraid to look at esteemed Wang Fei's face. In the silence of the room, the slanting sunlight was like the footprints of time. As the sun set in the west, it gradually faded away until it disappeared behind the window. A servant girl came in to light the lamp, but Shen Jueming dismissed her. Shen Jueming lit the lamp himself and broke the silence. Esteemed Wang Fei, Dr. Gu's matter. Only then did Han Yunxi raise her head. She wasn't sure if it was because she hadn't slept all night, but her bright eyes were now dim and lifeless. She looked like she'd fallen ill and was extremely wan and sallow. She took a sip of water before answering Shen Jueming. I'll use Gu Beiyue's name to issue orders for the Academy head to abolish the medical sanctions ban. We'll forever maintain a neutral stance. No matter the reason, the Medical Academy will never participate in the struggles of any country or organization. It's only responsible for its patients. Jueming was thrilled. This is Medical City's fortune and Cloud Realm Continent's fortune. Esteemed Wang Fei is wise and brilliant. Jueming wasn't sure if Han Yunxi had long known about Long Fei's origins, but he was worried that Han Yunxi would use Medical City as a weapon to punish Tianning if the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate went to war with Tianning. In that case, Han Yunxi hadn't disappointed him. It's not that I'm wise and brilliant, but Gu Beiyue's intentions to begin with. Send orders that Dr. Gu will enter seclusion today and won't see anyone or any patients. The Academy head's affairs will be handled by the Vice Council and Council of Elders, Han Yunxi added. Esteemed Wang Fei, don't worry. Old man knows what to do. As Shen Jueming spoke, he gave Luo Zuishan a look, indicating for him to leave. However, Luo Zuishan pretended not to see and refused to leave. Shen Jueming had no choice but to leave first. Firstly, he didn't want to interfere too much with the affairs of the South Central Commander-in-Chief's manor. Secondly, Gu Beiyue's fate was unknown. There were many things in the Medical Academy that he had to take charge of. After Shen Jueming left, Luo Zuishan immediately sneered. No wonder. No wonder. What do you mean? Su Donglin asked angrily. The Shadow Clan's loyalty to Western Qin's royal family is well known to the world. The East Qin Crown Prince killing him is perfectly justified. Luo Zuishan suppressed his anger. As a doctor, he respected Gu Beiyue and remembered Gu Beiyue's kindness in saving Shaoqi. After hearing about last night's events on the cliff and learning of Long Fei's true identity, it was hard for him not to suspect the Long Fei. Luo Zuishan, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't speak whatever you want. Do you know what you're saying? May I ask Guard Chu, if you and your master both know Dr. Gu's identity, does Dr. Gu know that your master is a descendant of the East Qin Imperial clan? Luo Zuishan asked. At this, Han Yunxi finally looked towards Chu Shifeng. Without a doubt, she wanted to ask the same question. Chu Shifeng pursed his lips, unable to answer. From what he understood, His Highness Duke of Qin hadn't revealed any information about East Qin to Gu Beiwe. If that was revealed, Gu Beiwe would hate His Highness more than anything, much less work with him. Actually, Chu Shifeng couldn't figure out his master either. He always thought that His Highness Duke of Qin and Gu Beiwe were working together purely to use Gu Beiwe. It wasn't until His Highness Duke of Qin gave the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate to Gu Beiwe and secretly worked with him to deal with the old fox that he discovered that His Highness Duke of Qin trusted Gu Beiwe completely. Even now, he couldn't figure out why His Highness Duke of Qin trusted the Shadow Clan. The Shadow Clan was loyal to Western Qin's Imperial Clan to the death, which meant they were East Qin's old enemies. Guard Chu, I'm asking you a question, Luo Zuishan urged. Chu Shifeng knew that if he answered truthfully, it'd be disadvantageous for His Highness, but he also knew he couldn't lie about this. Who would believe that the Shadow Clan would work with the East Qin Crown Prince willingly? Luo Zuishan waited patiently while Han Yunxi remained silent. In the end, Chu Shifeng gave in to the pressure and said, Dr. Gu didn't know. Han Yunxi remained expressionless, but her hands tightened around her teacup. Luo Zuishan shot to his feet and demanded, What kind of good intentions does Long Fei have? Perhaps Luo Zuishan's voice was too loud, but Han Yunxi's body visibly trembled. Luo Zuishan, this has nothing to do with you. Please. Luo Zuishan cut him off before he could finish. Academy Head Gu's business is my medical academy's business. How could it have nothing to do with old man? You don't dare to answer old man's questions. What, do you have a guilty conscience? His Highness Duke of Qin gave the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate to Gu Beiwe. How could he have bad intentions? Chu Shifeng argued. Then why did Long Fei hide his identity from Dr. Gu? Luo Zuishan asked next. Chu Shifeng was at a loss for words. His Highness Duke of Qin and Gu Beiwe were absolute opposites. There was no reason for them to make peace. They could only hide things and use them. This was a dead end. Just like the enmity between the imperial clans of Eastern and Western Qin, it would never be resolved. Chu Shifeng couldn't explain himself, so he could only look towards Han Yunxi. Esteemed Wang Fei, that man from last night couldn't have been His Highness. He's still in the army, so how could he be in Medical City? He thought, I can only do my best to convince esteemed Wang Fei that the dark-robed assassin wasn't His Highness Duke of Qin. That's the only way to give His Highness Duke of Qin a chance to explain himself. Han Yunxi's eyes flickered with disappointment. Chu Shifeng had no idea how much his mistress wanted him to keep explaining himself and give her a reason to stop her suspicions. Long Fei isn't the only expert in Tianshan Kenzo, right? Luo Zuishan laughed coldly. Esteemed Wang Fei, this subordinate doesn't understand the relationship between His Highness and Gu Beiwe either. But this subordinate is certain that the man from last night wasn't His Highness. Esteemed Wang Fei, you mustn't think too much. This subordinate will arrange for you to go back right now. If there's anything, you can discuss it with His Highness face to face. It's better than making wild guesses here. Chu Shifeng coaxed. Han Yunxi finally spoke, her voice as cold as water. He not only tricked Gu Beiwe, but me as well. After everything that had happened last night, she still insisted that the assassin wasn't Long Fei. Wasn't it because Long Fei lacked a reason to kill Gu Beiwe? And now, Long Fei's birth was the reason. How could she trust him now? How could she not be suspicious? He hid his injuries and put on an act for the spies, so she'd accept it. But why did he hide his identity? Even if she wanted to admit it, she needed a reason. Moreover, she didn't want to admit it. Over the past 3 to 4 years, she discussed the enmity between the Eastern and Western Qin multiple times, as well as the whereabouts of the 7 noble families. When she suspected that she was a descendant of the Western Qin imperial clan, she even told him that if she really was, she couldn't help him take control of Cloud Realm continent. But what about him? He'd hidden himself so deeply. She'd even asked his birth parents about it, but he'd pushed everything to the Tang clan. Just because she didn't pursue the matter didn't mean she could lie to him. Liking someone had nothing to do with his past or identity. She respected his past and his privacy, waiting for the day when he was willing to tell her everything. But who would have thought that she'd find out everything about him in this way? When Gu Beiwei was assassinated and the war broke out, he announced everything to the world. Did that count as telling her? Then what did she count for? In his heart, was she any different from the rest of the world? What a joke. Chu Shifeng broke out in cold sweat. He was so nervous that he didn't know what to say. Su Donglin hastened to explain himself. Esteemed Wang Fei, that assassin from last night had martial arts skills on par with His Highness. Even Celestial Mountain doesn't have people like that. The honored elders won't leave the mountain. You know that. Hearing this, Chu Shifeng perked up again. Luo Zuishan didn't know that the old man in Kenzo had lost all his martial arts for the sake of His Highness Duke of Qin, but esteemed Wang Fei did. Esteemed Wang Fei, it's very possible that the assassin from last night was from the heretical sword sect. Chu Shifeng said urgently. Han Yunxi waved a hand. All of you get out. Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin still wanted to coax her, but Luo Zuishan shooed them out. Luo Zuixia wanted to stay, but Han Yunxi chased her out as well. Luo Zuishan immediately went to the Poison Sect's forbidden grounds to find Gu, while Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin stood guard outside, their hearts burning with anxiety. Boss, has His Highness replied yet? Su Donglin asked in a low voice. It'd be good if he did. Chu Shifeng's handsome face was as sorrowful as an old tangerine. This won't do. I have to write another letter to His Highness. Esteemed Wang Fei must be suspecting him. Boss say, why did His Highness, why did he lie to esteemed Wang Fei? Su Donglin asked timidly. When Chu Shifeng didn't answer, he muttered to himself, esteemed Wang Fei and Dr. Gu are close friends. Could it be that His Highness was afraid of esteemed Wang Fei's objections, so he hid everything and used Gu Beiwei to cut the weeds and dig up the roots?
Slap.
There was a loud thud as Chu Shifeng slapped Su Donglin's mouth. Su Donglin wanted to cry from the pain, but he didn't dare to speak. Chu Shifeng went to write a letter and came back when he saw Tang Li had arrived. But Tang Li had been turned away at the door just like the rest of them. Su Donglin had already told Tang Li everything. You mean to say that my big bro didn't tell her about the East Qin Imperial clan before the war started? Tang Li couldn't believe it. Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin both shook their heads. That's impossible. Tang Li grew anxious. My big bro would definitely tell her something so important before the war started. Didn't she get my big bro's letter last night? Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin still shook their heads. Then what about Gu Beiwei? Did Gu Beiwei get the letter? Tang Li asked next. Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin shook their heads again. Last night, Long Feiyi had not only written a huge letter to Beiwei, but also sent a shadow guard to tell him a few things. Unfortunately, the shadow guard who knew the details had died at the hands of an assassin last night. Just what did the shadow guard say to Gu Beiwei? What did he put in the letter for Gu Beiwei? It had already disappeared into the abyss with Gu Beiwei. Tang Li felt a little powerless. He, Chu Shifeng, and Su Donglin all sat by the door, waiting for Long Feiyi's reply. The East Qin Crown Prince's battle for revenge not only shocked Medical City, but all of Cloud Realm continent. Bai Yanqing almost fell out of his chair when he heard the news. He grabbed Bai Yuqiao by the collar and raged, impossible. Long Fei is still recovering on Celestial Mountain. Chapter 808. Master, this matter is absolutely true. This disciple wouldn't dare deceive you. If you don't believe me, you can personally investigate. The East Qin Army's flag has already been raised. Although Bai Yuqiao was also very surprised, she was frightened by her master's reaction. Her master had always been calm. Even when he encountered an accident, he had never been this excited before. Bai Yanqing let go of Bai Yuqiao's collar in disappointment. His eyes narrowed into slits. Good Long Feiyi, you actually dare to trick old man. It had to be known that he had already planned everything. Today, he would announce Long Feiyi's identity. He already knew Long Fei's identity. Bai Yuqiao was confused. She did not understand what her master was saying. She wanted to ask more, but Bai Yanqing quickly said, "Report this matter to your senior brother as soon as possible. Tell him that no matter what method he uses, he must bring back the war horses as soon as possible. Otherwise, Northern Li will be in danger." Master, Ning Cheng still has the Red Barbarian cannon. The Qin king may not be able to take down the Ning family army in a year or so, Bai Yuqiao seriously said. "What do you know? Why aren't you going?" Bai Yanqing angrily roared. He was on the verge of losing control of his emotions. Bai Yuqiao was scared. She did not dare say anything and quickly retreated. Bai Yanqing paced back and forth in the room. It took him a while to calm down. He already knew Long Fei's identity as the East Qin Crown Prince. When Jun Yixia brought back the bloodstains from Fishery Island, he learned of the existence of the Mermaid Clan and suspected the Bai Li Navy. He had already found out that the Bai clan was the Mermaid Clan. The drop of blood in Bailey Mingxiang had made him suspect Long Fei's identity. Han Yunxi's cinnabar mole on Fishery Island had made him realize that Long Fei might have activated the Lustbite seal. Long Tianma's grandmother, the Empress Dowager of the Tianing country, suspected that Long Fei didn't have the blood of Tianing's imperial clan. She even spent a huge sum of silver to have the City of Daughters kidnap Grand Concubine Yi. The city lord of the City of Daughters, Madame Lingyu, had told him about this matter, and he had basically confirmed Long Fei's identity. Before Chu Shifeng met Morong Wanru, he had long used her life as a bargaining chip to blackmail Grand Concubine Yi. Grand Concubine Yi then revealed the truth of how she'd adopted Long Fei. At this point, he was completely certain that Long Fei was the descendant of the East Qin imperial family. He used his acupuncture skills to knock Grand Concubine Yi unconscious, then used Duanmu Yao and Madame Lingyu to put on a good show to confuse Long Fei. During the Battle of Celestial Mountain, He Elian used delaying tactics to severely injure Long Fei and trap Long Fei on the mountain. This way, Jun Yixia would have enough time to buy battle horses. He was planning to sit by and watch as Ningcheng and the South Central regions fought. According to his calculations, Ningcheng's forces would lose to Ningcheng due to Medical City's interference. Moreover, Ningcheng's vitality would be greatly damaged. Ningcheng had deployed all of his redcoat cannons, so Tianing's northern defenses were practically non-existent. He'd bring Jun Yixia back with him to train his battle horses and send them to Tianing without any resistance. Once they conquered Tianing, the defeated Western Zhou, Tianan and South Central regions would have nothing left to say. He never expected Han Yunxi and Gu Beiwei to come to Medical City. Not only had they resolved the crisis of the South Central regions, but they'd also taken control of Medical City. Even so, he didn't lose his composure. Because he had Long Fei's weakness in his hands. Long Fei's identity as East Qin's crown prince meant there were too many things he could do. He had a perfect plan that was already in motion. He was going to announce Long Fei's identity today. But who knew that Long Fei would discover Nine Xian Palace's spies and beat him to it? Not only did he secretly descend Celestial Mountain, he even used the mermaid army to cross the river and ambush the Ning clan troops. He even hung up the East Qin imperial banners to announce his identity to the world. Long Fei's move had truly caught him off guard. Jun Yixia had no time. Northern Li had no time either. Bai Yanqing paced back and forth, walking faster and faster. He wondered if he should reveal his final trump card at this time. Bai Yanqing hesitated for a long time. It wasn't until the Nine Xian Palace's spies arrived that he calmed down. He asked, "Bailey Mingxiang also descended the mountain with Long Fei?" "They descended the mountain together," the spy reported. "Long Fei wasn't injured, so why did Bailey Mingxiang come to Celestial Mountain?" Bai Yanqing asked again. "Master, she enters Long Fei's room every day. As for what she does inside, our men can't find out," the spy replied. This girl was originally Han Yunxi's servant, right? Bai Yanqing was very excited about Bailey Mingxiang. Although she was Han Yunxi's servant, she was loyal to Long Fei. "Master, Don't forget that she is a member of the Bai clan. She knows martial arts, but she has never used it. I'm afraid that she is deliberately hiding it, the spy reminded.
Why?
Bai Yanqing stroked his beard. This subordinate is also puzzled. Long Fei Yi has never had a servant serving him. Now that his internal injuries have healed, there is no reason for him to keep her by his side, the spy said seriously. Since Long Fei Yi is healed, he must have cultivated the second stage of the lust bite power and can use it freely, Bai Yanqing muttered after pondering for a long time. The third stage of the lust bite power must be through dual cultivation. Master, you mean that this Bailey Mingxiang? The spy was shocked. Bai Yanqing suddenly laughed out loud. Excellent. Excellent. Long Fei Yi, old man didn't guess wrong. You will lose to a woman in the end. Bai Yanqing steeled his heart and decided to reveal his final trump card. He said, prepare the carriage. Old man wants to personally meet the D clan head, Ning Cheng. He wanted to thank Long Fei Yi for revealing Ning Cheng's background. Otherwise, he wouldn't have known who to work with for such a perfect plan. Back then, it was the D clan who had funded and supported them from behind the scenes. They had joined forces with the Wind and Black clans to destroy the last of East Qin's imperial guards. He believed that this time, the three clans would work together happily as well. Bai Yanqing quickly set out for Tianning. He didn't know that Ning Cheng was currently in Medical City, secretly meeting with Ning Jing. Ning Jing had just received news of the war as well, and was so shocked that her face had turned white. She had always known that Long Fei Yi was Tianning's strongest enemy, but she didn't know that Long Fei Yi was the D clan's enemy as well. Big brother, why aren't you hurrying back yet? Long Fei Yi's mermaid soldiers don't just know how to cross rivers. There are two major water systems in South Shaonan Prefecture that we can't guard against. Ning Jing coaxed. Within half a month, Tianning's southern regions will be conquered. There's no use for your lordship to go back. Ning Cheng was rather calm. Long Fei Yi's move was truly ingenious. He'd used revenge as an excuse to send out troops and even revealed the Ning clan's secret to the public. How much support did he win with this? The Great Qin Empire had opened up Cloud Realm Continent's only golden age. Eastern and Western Qin's imperial clan was still the most honorable and sacred bloodline in people's hearts. Previously, Western Qin's Chu clan had announced their identity as the Nether clan and waged war under the pretext of reviving Western Zhou. However, they hadn't received any support from the people and were instead denounced for using the name of Western Qin's imperial clan for personal gain. However, Long Fei Yi was different. Long Fei Yi was the legitimate heir of the imperial clan. It was perfectly justifiable for him to seek revenge and revive East Qin. Moreover, Long Fei Yi's own strength was extremely powerful. Ning Cheng could already foresee that after Tianning's southern regions fell, there would definitely be forces from Western Zhou, Tianning, and Tian, and who would pledge allegiance to Long Fei Yi and serve East Qin wholeheartedly. Rather than submit first and be rewarded later, it was better to lose the war and become a prisoner. Big bro, are you just going to watch as Ning Jing knew how to make money but not politics? Before she could finish, Ning Cheng cut her off with a long sigh. If we can find the orphan of Western Qin's imperial clan, there's still a chance to turn things around. Otherwise, Northern Li will be in trouble. He Long Fei Yi, it's no wonder he's East Qin's descendant. Big bro, are you giving up? Ning Jing shook her head.
No.
Ning Cheng's lips curved into a cold, arrogant smile. There's one person who can stop Long Fei Yi's army from advancing. Han Yunxi. Ning Jing was very smart. Get the Tang clan's hidden weapons as soon as possible. You don't need to worry about anything else, Ning Cheng said coldly. Understood. Ning Jing nodded. Ning Cheng was about to leave when he turned around and asked, Where's Tang Li? Ning Jing's heart skipped a beat. I asked him to buy me food. I'm not used to the food in this inn. You don't have much time left, Ning Cheng reminded her before leaving. Ning Jing hurriedly closed the door and let out a sigh of relief. In fact, Tang Li had disappeared a long time ago. She didn't know why she had lied to Ning Cheng. Emperor Kongcheng of Western Zhou, Long Tianma of Tian, the emperors of the northern dynasties, and even the city lord of Carefree City, Elder Wang of Medicine City, and the disciples of Long Fei Yi were all stunned by Long Fei Yi's identity. The most shocked of all was Chu Tianyin, who was on the eastern border of western Qin. He never imagined that the person he'd been working with for so long was actually the common enemy of the Fiend clan and the western Qin imperial family, the East Qin dynasty. He firmly believed that Gu Beiwei had no idea. Otherwise, Gu Beiwei would never work with Long Fei Yi. He only felt that Gu Beiwei had been used by Long Fei Yi. He sent several letters to Gu Beiwei, but he didn't know that Gu Beiwei would no longer receive them. That night, Gu Beiwei and Mu Ling returned from the poison sect's forbidden grounds. As soon as he learned of Long Fei Yi's identity, Gu rushed to Han Yunxi's door and pounded on it. But when Han Yunxi opened the door, Gu's words were all stuck in his throat. Should he tell Han Yunxi about Mute Granny? How should he tell her? Long Fei Yi had lied about Mute Granny first, but he'd also lied to his poison lass. Would Long Fei Yi really be such a petty person? Would he be so despicable as to hide his identity and use Gu Beiwei? Gu had always been clear about his likes and dislikes, but this was the first time he'd hesitated. Did you find Gu Beiwei? Han Yunxi was only asking casually. She knew that if they'd found Gu Beiwei, Gu would have shouted all the way here. Gu was silent for a long time before he said gently, "No, I just came to see you. You're tired too. Go rest." Han Yunxi felt a little powerless. She was about to close the door when Luo Zuishan suddenly ran over and blocked it. "Esteemed Wang Fei, old man found out. The Duke of Qin isn't with the army. The one leading the troops is General Bailey." When the battle started last night, the Bailey army claimed that the Duke of Qin was personally in command, but no one saw him after daybreak. The Ning clan troops began to suspect that the Duke of Qin's identity is fake this afternoon, but the Bailey army still hasn't responded. Han Yunxi froze, then exclaimed, "You mean to say that Long Fei Yi isn't with the army?" Chapter 809.
Yes.
The Duke of Qin isn't with the army. Luo Zuishan was very certain. He didn't forget to shoot a look at Gu. But Gu remained silent with a gloomy face. Han Yunxi glanced at Chu Shifeng. Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin had been standing guard here all day without gathering any information, so how could they know so much? Esteemed Wang Fei, Medical City, has eyes and ears everywhere. This news came from the front lines, it can't be wrong. Luo Zuishan said seriously. Everyone understood what Luo Zuishan meant. Since the Duke of Qin wasn't with the army, then Chu Shifeng's insistence that he wasn't present had been overturned. Chu Shifeng angrily grabbed Luo Zuishan by the collar. "So, what if the Duke of Qin isn't with the army? Can you be sure when His Highness left? How could His Highness abandon something as important as leading the army? How could it be possible to travel from Sand City to Medicine City in 1 or 2 days? Let go. Let go." Luo Zuishan tugged at Chu Shifeng's hand until he felt like he was going to choke him to death. In the end, Gu pressed down on Chu Shifeng's hand. "Qishao, you can't be suspecting His Highness Duke of Qin as well, right?" How could Chu Shifeng not know what Luo Zuishan was thinking? Luo Zuishan was trying to sow discord for the sake of Gu. Esteemed Wang Fei and His Highness Duke of Qin had almost fallen out because of Gu. Chu Shifeng looked down on petty people who took advantage of other people's difficulties, much less animals who bullied their brothers' wives. He stared straight into Gu's eyes with utter disdain. Gu wasn't someone Chu Shifeng could provoke. His gaze hardened as he grabbed Chu Shifeng's wrist and yanked it open, flinging him to the ground.
Gu.
Chu Shifeng raged. He wanted to rush over, but Gu raised a hand to play with a thorn seed between his fingers. "Are you seeking death?" he asked coldly. "Gu, His Highness the Duke of Qin treats you." Chu Shifeng almost exposed Gu's cooperation with Long Fei Yi, but Gu cut him off harshly. "This young gentleman isn't his hunting dog. How can I not suspect him when things are already like this? Are you an idiot?" "You?" Chu Shifeng was furious. Unexpectedly, Gu changed the topic and said, "Suspicions are just suspicions. but who knows if the person last night was him. This young gentleman advises you to hurry up and find out just when Long Fei left the barracks. Shao Qi, can they be trusted? Luo Zuishan added. Gu slowly turned his head, his gaze sharp enough to kill. Luo Zuishan was frightened and finally shut his mouth in resentment. Following Luo Zuishan's silence, the large courtyard suddenly quieted down, to the point that the atmosphere became strange. Perhaps everyone had their own thoughts, but no one dared to voice their true thoughts except for Luo Zuishan. Gu's lips twitched. He wanted to smile at Han Yunxi, but couldn't bring himself to do so. Poison lass, do you still trust them? He asked. Although the question was, do you still trust them? In the end it was still, do you still trust Long Fei Yi? If she trusted Long Fei Yi, then she'd believe Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin's investigation results. If she didn't trust Long Fei Yi, then she'd be convinced that this was all a scam from beginning to end. Naturally, she wouldn't trust Chu Shifeng and the rest either. No matter how much the dark-robed man resembled Long Fei Yi, as long as they had proof that Long Fei Yi was in the army and not in Medical City, it was enough to prove that the man wasn't Long Fei Yi. Kenzo's martial arts had been crippled, and Celestial Mountain's honored elders couldn't leave the mountain to meddle in mortal affairs. Besides Long Fei Yi himself, he didn't have any experts at his disposal. Everyone looked at Han Yunxi and waited for her reply. Han Yunxi looked expressionlessly at Chu Shifeng. She was about to speak when Chu Shifeng hastily cut her off. Esteemed Wang Fei, this subordinate will go investigate right now. So speaking, he didn't give Han Yunxi a chance to speak, but dragged Su Donglin away with him. Perhaps even Chu Shifeng was afraid that esteemed Wang Fei would refuse, or that they wouldn't even have a chance to investigate. Just what was Han Yunxi's attitude? Seeing Chu Shifeng leave, she smiled helplessly, making it hard to read. Poison lass, old fiend, hurry and find Gu Beiwei, won't you? Don't waste time. Besides her pleas, Han Yunxi didn't reveal any other emotions. Gu had never been able to figure out this woman, but this was the first time he felt that she was so difficult to approach. He wanted to know what she was thinking and enter her heart when she was at her weakest. Even if he didn't love her, at least he could comfort her. Unfortunately, he didn't even give her the chance. He would never forget how Han Yunxi had decisively trusted Long Fei Yi without a shred of doubt during the confrontation at Medicine Ghost Valley. He would never forget how much he'd hoped for the day when the truth of the lies at Medicine Ghost Valley would be revealed. Then he could point at Long Fei Yi's nose and curse Han Yunxi to his heart's content. He could throw caution to the wind and publicize his immortal body, then tear up his original agreement with Long Fei Yi. But he didn't want to, nor could he bear to, hurt her like this. She was already very upset. Poison lass, Chi brother, I don't know if you still trust Long Fei Yi. But Chi brother knows that you must be upset. Even he was angry that Long Fei Yi wasn't loyal enough to tell everyone first before announcing such shocking news to the world. What's more, Han Yunxi was Qin Wang Fei. Gu nodded heavily. All right. I won't waste any time. Take care of yourself. Gu was about to leave when Han Yunxi asked again, Old ghost, is your body okay? Even though she and Gu Beiwei had resolved the crisis brought about by the northernly imperial physician, she and Gu Beiwei were both very clear about the abnormality in Gu's body. She had planned to ask Gu Beiwei about it last night, but she didn't have the chance to do so. Gu simply admired Han Yunxi. He really wanted to open Han Yunxi's head and see what was inside. How could this woman be so calm that she even remembered to care about the abnormality in his body? Gu smiled. It's okay, I won't die. He quickly turned and left. Other than Mu Ling, no one else saw the pain in his smile. Mu Ling caught up with Gu and spread her arms in front of him with a serious expression. Chi brother, no matter what happens, Ling, I will always believe you. I will never doubt you. Gu didn't want to pay attention to her and walked around her. However, he looked back. Girl, if I lied to you, would you still believe me? Mu Ling nodded without hesitation. I would. Even if you sold me, I would still believe you. I'd be happy. Sometimes, believing wasn't a judgment, but a choice. Gu walked back with a frown and gently flicked Muling-er's forehead.
She's not like you.
Chi brother, do you know what kind of woman Han Yunxi is? Muling-er asked seriously. Gu was at a loss for words. Muling-er muttered to herself. Chi brother, we're actually the same. It wasn't clear if Gu heard, but he hooked an arm around Muling-er's shoulder. Why are you blabbering so much? How annoying. Go find him. This young master will find Gu Beiwe even if it means moving mountains and filling rivers. People who loved each other would always have their fingers interlocked and arms around each other's shoulders. They would always be good brothers and sisters. Even though Muling-er was familiar with this logic, she still enjoyed it. After Gu left, Han Yunxi did something even calmer. She wrote a letter to the City of Daughters and called for the poison guards that she had picked out from the shadow guards to come over to protect her. At the same time, she also wrote a letter to the City of Daughters and called for a few female mercenaries who were highly skilled in martial arts to come over. Afterwards, she ordered people to bring over all the scrolls from the poison sect's forbidden grounds and shut herself in her room to read them. She didn't cry or make a fuss. She didn't even show any signs of anger, but was unusually calm and silent. Instead, her unusual silence made everyone's hearts hang in their throats. Han Yunxi, just what's wrong with you? Chu Shifeng personally sent a flying hawk message to Bailey Yuanlong before returning to the room to keep watch. Deep into the night, the lights in the room were still on, but he didn't feel sleepy at all. His eyes were wide open and his face was ashen. By daybreak, his face had turned ashen. Last night, he'd sent an urgent letter to His Highness Duke of Qin. If His Highness was near Sandy River, he would have seen it and replied long ago. But there was still no reply. That meant the letter had already been sent to the army. Chu Shifeng's heart clenched as he continued to wait. But from dawn to dusk, there was still no reply. He was truly afraid. Just where was His Highness Duke of Qin? How far was he from Sandy River? Why hadn't he received a reply yet? Finally, in the dead of night, 2 secret letters arrived at the same time. One was from His Highness Duke of Qin in light purple, while the other was from Bailey Yuanlong in black. The former was addressed to esteemed Wang Fei, while the latter was to Chu Shifeng. Chu Shifeng held the letters in his hands and hesitated. Su Donglin snatched the letter from Bailey Yuanlong's hands and tore it open. Both of them gaped at the contents. At this moment, Han Yunxi suddenly opened the door and saw the letters in Su Donglin and Chu Shifeng's hands. Her eyes gave a start at the sight of the light purple letter, but she quickly recovered her icy expression. She didn't speak, but reached out a hand. Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin obediently handed over the letters. She read the black letter and furrowed her brows. Esteemed Wang Fei, His Highness he. Su Donglin had no words to explain himself. Bailey Yuanlong's reply said that His Highness Duke of Qin hadn't personally led the expedition, but had secretly left the army for days. Han Yunxi tossed the black letter to Chu Shifeng and turned to enter the room. It wasn't until she shut the door that she realized the pinkish-purple letter in her hands had almost been crushed to pieces. She sniffled and placed the letter on the table, smoothing it out with great effort. Even when she received a blank letter, she still couldn't wait to open it, full of anticipation. But why was it so difficult to open this letter this time? It was clearly the most familiar letter, so why did it feel so unfamiliar? Long Fei Yi, just how much have I understood of you since our marriage? If it's an explanation, isn't this letter too late? Han Yunxi took a deep breath and opened the letter. It wasn't a long explanation like she expected, nor was it blank. Instead, there was only a single sentence. Chapter 810. Long Fei Ye's late letter only contained one sentence. Han Yunxi, do you still trust me? Her fingers gently brushed the ink. The ink was no longer warm, but it still emitted a faint ink fragrance. In fact, she rarely saw his handwriting, but she remembered it very clearly. This handwriting was vigorous and powerful, domineering and unrestrained, revealing his aura. It was said that the handwriting reflected the person, but she couldn't tell how he felt when he wrote these words. The romantic pinkish-purple color coupled with his vigorous handwriting made it seem like her tenderness and his iron-bloodedness blended together. They seemed to be closely integrated into each other, yet they seemed to have formed their own worlds, mutually contradictory and unable to become one. Han Yunxi, do you still trust me? She stroked the letter again and again. Finally, as usual, she carefully folded the letter neatly, put it in an envelope, and hid it close to her clothes. Then, as usual, she wrote back to him, but this time it wasn't Long Fei Yi, I miss you. Instead, it was an empty letter. When Long Fei Yi received Han Yunxi's letter, he was on his way to Medical City. He had already been on the road for 2 days and 2 nights, so he had to rest tonight. Otherwise, the horses and Uncle Gao wouldn't be able to take it. He leaned against the carriage as he read the letter. He was still dressed in black, exuding an irresistible sense of nobility and mystery in the night. He lowered his head slightly, his drooping brows appearing slightly cold. The curve of his face appeared even more handsome and cold in the night. He quietly read the letter, forming a world of his own. A cold and lonely world. It was clearly a blank piece of paper, but he stared at it for a very long time. Bailey Mingxiang, Uncle Gao, and the shadow guard Ah Dong were resting on the side, but their gazes all fell on the letter in His Highness Duke of Qin's hand. If His Highness Duke of Qin was able to stare at it for so long, it had to be esteemed Wang Fei's letter. But wasn't His Highness Duke of Qin reading it for too long this time? They also didn't know the truth behind Gu Beiyue's death. Bailey Mingxiang's mind kept replaying the words she had heard before. She was a woman of few words, and these days, she had been even more silent. Uncle Gao gave Bailey Mingxiang a look. Bailey Mingxiang shook his head and didn't dare to go over. In the end, Uncle Gao went over by himself. Your Highness, it's getting late.
Get some rest.
Your health is more important. Over the past few days, His Highness had been busy dealing with secret letters from various places and had no time to rest. Once the identity of the East Qin imperial clan was announced, it would signify the beginning of His Highness Duke of Qin's conquest of the world. The Bailey army had already taken Tianning's South Shaonan prefecture. All of the aristocratic families of the South Central regions had unanimously expressed their support for His Highness Duke of Qin and their willingness to serve the East Qin imperial clan. Meanwhile, Western Zhou, Tianan, and even some of Tianning's separatist factions all sent secret letters to express their willingness to surrender and serve the East Qin imperial clan. The situation was great. His Highness Duke of Qin was supposed to stay in the army for a long time, but he left everything behind to travel in secret. If Consort One was still alive, she'd probably be angered to death. If Tang Zijin found out about this, he'd definitely release Aunt Ru and chase after him. Long Fei Yi recovered his wits and put away the empty letter by his chest. Coldly, he asked, "You're still not going to rest?" Uncle Gao was overwhelmed by the favor and didn't know how to reply. Unexpectedly, Long Fei Yi continued, "If you're not going to rest, then we'll continue on our way. We'll reach Medical City in 3 days, then you can go back to the Tang clan to retire." Uncle Gao wanted to cry, but no tears came out. It would take at least 4 days to reach Medical City from here. If they had to get there in 3 days, they'd probably have to stay up all night again. His Highness Duke of Qin was clearly in a bad mood, so how could he dare complain? He called for Bailey Mingxiang and the others before continuing on their way. Bailey Mingxiang was still sitting by Uncle Gao's side. Not only did she recall the words His Highness Duke of Qin had said to the Shadow Guard, but she also recalled the phoenix birthmark on esteemed Wang Fei's back. She was already certain that esteemed Wang Fei still didn't know that she was the orphan of the Western Qin imperial family. Could it be that Gu Beiyue had discovered esteemed Wang Fei's and His Highness Duke of Qin's origins, so he had a conflict with them and was killed? Could it be that Gu Beiyue didn't know about esteemed Wang Fei's origins, nor did he know about His Highness Duke of Qin's? Could it be that His Highness Duke of Qin used Gu Beiyue to seize Medical City before making the first move? Or could it be that Gu Beiyue didn't know esteemed Wang Fei's origins and discovered that His Highness Duke of Qin was from East Qin, so Gu Beiyue wanted to avenge the Western Qin imperial family and got into a conflict with His Highness Duke of Qin, so he was killed? Then what about His Highness Duke of Qin? Did he know the significance of the phoenix birthmark? Did he know esteemed Wang Fei's origins? Did he really dote on esteemed Wang Fei? Bailey Mingxiang considered all the possibilities. In any case, the Shadow Clan and East Qin were irreconcilable enemies. There was no way to resolve their grudges. His Highness Duke of Qin's motive for killing Gu Beiwe was all too obvious. Bailey Mingxiang began to miss esteemed Wang Fei. She didn't know if that woman could still be as calm and collected as she used to be, dealing with difficult situations beautifully. Esteemed Wang Fei, did she understand the feud between East and Western Qin? The carriage sped along. Wang Fei didn't reply to Han Yunqi's letters. As usual, he stayed up all night to deal with all sorts of letters, but he never spaced out when dealing with urgent matters. Today, however, his mind had wandered off multiple times. Bailey Mingxiang was a very conflicted woman. After an entire day and night of struggling, a piece of news exploded across Cloud Realm continent like a clap of thunder. Everyone gaped at the news, their hearts thumping in fear. This news was about Han Yunqi's origins. Someone had announced Han Yunqi's identity. Qin Wang Fei, Han Yunqi, wasn't Han Kong'an's daughter, but the daughter of Lady Tianqin and an orphan from the poison sect. Lady Tianqin was Mu Xian of the Mu clan, whose mother was a princess of Western Qin. Han Yunqi might not count as a Western Qin princess, but she was the only person in the world with the blood of the Western Qin imperial clan. As the sole orphan of the Western Qin imperial clan, she deserved the title of princess. When the Shadow Guard hurried over to report the news, Wang Fei didn't even call for the carriage to stop. Instead, he flew out of the carriage and saw half of the secret missive scattered on the ground. He seized a Dong's horse and galloped away, leaving behind only one sentence. Bailey Mingxiang, your father will be in charge of all military affairs. Bailey Mingxiang was in a daze. She never thought that the issue she was struggling with would suddenly be announced to the public. But even though it was already out in the open, she still couldn't figure out if His Highness Duke of Qin had known about it before. A Dong fell from his horse and sat paralyzed on the ground, unable to believe his ears. Uncle Gao clutched his chest, barely able to catch his breath. When he finally recovered, he couldn't stop muttering to himself, "Heavens, heavens, heavens, esteemed Wang Fei is actually..." Wang Fei galloped like a madman. He couldn't imagine how Han Yunqi would react after hearing the news. He couldn't imagine what kind of danger she'd be in. He wanted nothing more than to rush to her right now. Even in the face of Han Yunqi's empty missives, he was still calm and rational. But at this moment, he couldn't even maintain a shred of his composure. He had hidden everything so well, going to great lengths to erase all the clues. Mute Granny, who knew everything, was already dead. Who knew? Who would announce it to the public at a time like this? Who was it? Was it him? The person who spread the news had clearly planned this beforehand. Once the news was out, it spread to every corner of Cloud Realm continent. Even secluded places like the Tang clan were the first to hear the news. Tang Zijin's temper flared. He was about to rush down the mountain when Lady Tang stopped him. "Where are you going?" Lady Tang's face was ashen white as well. "Where am I going?" Tang Zijin laughed coldly. Iru already had her suspicions when she overheard about the Shadow Clan, but I never expected Han Yunqi to really be a descendant of Western Qin. We didn't have any proof before, but now that we've been exposed, I'm going to ask Fei how he's going to deal with that woman. Lady Tang gave him a shove and said coldly, with Fei's shrewdness, how could he not know? Would he really allow a woman of dubious origins to stay by his side? Her words woke Tang Zijin up, causing him to calm down. You mean to say, Fei, he was hiding things on purpose? Lady Tang sighed. Most likely. Didn't Li write a letter yesterday about Gu Beiwe? As I see it, Fei must have killed Gu Beiwe to silence him. Nonsense. The ancestors of Western Qin's imperial clan and our Tang clan will never allow him to do such a preposterous thing. Tang Zijin raged as he turned to head for the back of the mountain. Where are you going now? Lady Tang chased after him. Tang Zijin didn't even look back as he sped up. To find Iru. It wasn't just Tang Zijin who was furious, but Bailey Yuanlong as well. When he learned that Han Yunxi was a descendant of Western Qin's imperial clan, he couldn't contain his rage. He immediately wrote a letter urging His Highness Duke of Qin to kill her as soon as possible. First, it would prevent future troubles, and second, it would appease the East Qin soldiers. How many innocent Bai clan members had been sacrificed in the war between Eastern and Western Qin? How many families had been destroyed and homeless? How many had hidden their identities and never seen the light of day? All of this had been caused by Western Qin's imperial clan. When the old man from Kenzo heard the news, his first reaction was, Han Yunxi is a descendant of Western Qin. Fei was actually tricked by a woman. Before the first wave had even subsided, another wave rose as all of Cloud Realm continent boiled over. Some said that His Highness Duke of Qin had been tricked by Han Yunxi, while others claimed that he'd long known of Han Yunxi's identity and used it to hurt her on purpose. Still others claimed that they didn't know each other's identities at all. Now that they knew, they'd definitely turn into enemies still. No one bothered to find out who spread the news. In the medical academy, Han Yunxi sat up and down in her rooms, feeling unwell all over. She suddenly thought of Mute Granny. That Mute Granny of the Mu clan. Ever since she found out about her origins in the poison sect, she'd never suspected that she was a descendant of Western Qin's imperial clan. How could she have known that Lady Tianqin was not only a daughter of the Mu clan, but a descendant of Western Qin's imperial clan as well? Even after Gu Beiyue's identity as a member of the Shadow Clan was exposed, she didn't suspect anything. When Chu Shifeng told her that Gu Beiyue was the only remaining member of the Shadow Clan and that Gu Beiyue only wanted to live a peaceful life, she believed him. Back then, she even thought that if she was a descendant of Western Qin's imperial clan, then Gu Beiyue had no reason to hide it from her. Thus, she believed Chu Shifeng's words. But now, what about Long Feiyi? How much did he know about Long Feiyi? Han Yunxi pressed her hands against the table as she panted for breath. She did her best to think back to everything she knew about Mute Granny. She recalled how Mu Ling had cursed and berated her when she'd blocked her carriage. Mu Ling had accused her and Long Feiyi of killing Mute Granny. Han Yunxi took multiple deep breaths, but couldn't calm down. She couldn't think of anything. She had to find Mu Ling. But as soon as she opened the door, she saw Chu Shifeng, Su Donglin, and a group of shadow guard blocking her way. She ignored them, but Su Donglin stopped her. Esteemed Wang Fei, you can't go anywhere. Who gave you the right to restrict me? Han Yunxi demanded. Long Feiyi? But Chu Shifeng's tone was cold.
No.
Chu Shifeng, what does he mean? Chu Shifeng's ancestors had almost been exterminated by the Western Qin imperial clan during the war between Eastern and Western Qin. Chapter 811. Han Yunxi was such a sharp person. Cold as she scrutinized Chu Shifeng, she could smell the scent of hatred. It was precisely this taste of hatred that was like a basin of cold water pouring down from the top of her head, drenching her thoroughly. It also made her completely calm down from her chaotic thoughts. Long Feiyi was the East Qin crown prince, while she was the orphan of Western Qin. Eastern and Western Qin had a reconcilable enmity between them. Actually, she wasn't the real Han Yunxi, so she couldn't sense any hatred. But Long Feiyi was different. Long Feiyi had known since he was a child that he wasn't the real Tianning imperial prince. Moreover, his imperial mother had long been cultivating beauty's blood in hopes of breaking through the perplexing butterfly illusion and taking over the world. All of this proved that Long Feiyi had been shouldering the heavy responsibility of avenging his country since he was a child. All of his years of hard work had been for the sake of hoisting the East Qin banner and conquering the world one day. Most of his most loyal subordinates who knew his background like the back of their hands were most likely loyal to the East Qin imperial family. Whether it was the Bailey army, the Shadow Guard, or the Tang clan. It'd be strange if Chu Shifeng didn't hate her. Although Han Yunxi couldn't sense West Qin's hatred towards East Qin, She could understand the feelings of national enmity and family hatred. She too cherished her motherland and hated all those invaders, plunderers, and murderers throughout history. Seeing the enmity in Chu Shifeng's eyes, Han Yunxi's head was filled with thoughts. All she cared about was the truth. Did Long Fei know about her identity long ago? That was why she was in such a rush to find Mu Ling. Long Fei had been investigating her identity all this time. He'd found out about Lady Mu Xin from the Mu clan in Medicine City. Today's news from Dragon Sky Continent had mentioned the Mu clan's Mu Xin and confirmed that she was a descendant of Western Qin's imperial clan. This coincidence, combined with Mu Ling, Er's accusation of blocking the carriage, made it hard for her not to think of Mute Granny. Mute Granny was definitely the one who knew the truth the best. If Long Fei had known about her identity, he could have easily shut Mute Granny's mouth to hide it from her. If that was really the case, what was Long Fei's intention towards her? What was the purpose of Long Fei cooperating with Gu Beiwei? There was also another possibility. Mute Granny's case had nothing to do with Long Fei. Long Fei also didn't know about her past. However, this possibility also made Han Yunxi feel even more helpless and desperate. How could the East Qin crown prince fall in love with a descendant of the Western Qin royal family? Was Long Fei regretting at this moment, regretting that he had taken the initiative to come to her? What was the truth? She hated doubts and suspicions. She only wanted the truth. Whether it was hurt, anger, hatred, resentment, or willingness to love to the end, they all needed the truth. Only after knowing the truth would they have a choice. Otherwise, she'd be led around like an idiot. She hated this feeling. This was her last chance to calm down. Long Fei. Long Fei. At least, you know who you are.
But what about me?
Han Yunxi thought of Gu Beiwei, the descendant of the Shadow Clan and Western Qin's most loyal supporter. Gu Beiwei, how much do you know?
How much have you lied to me?
Chu Shifeng, are you planning to rebel against your superiors? Han Yunxi sounded like she was questioning him, but she was actually probing him. Rebel? Western Qin spawn, you're not worthy. Chu Shifeng gave a cold snort. Not long ago, he'd been trying to explain things to her in a submissive tone, afraid that she'd misunderstand Long Fei. But now his attitude had changed 180 degrees. How much did he hate the Western Qin royal family? I want to see Long Fei. Where is he? Han Yunxi said cold. Don't worry, His Highness will definitely come to see you one last time. Chu Shifeng said cold. Long Fei knew about my identity long ago? He's been lying to me this entire time? Han Yunxi suppressed her anger as she probed again. Chu Shifeng hesitated, but still insisted. Yes. Han Yunxi couldn't restrain her anger. She turned to enter the room and slammed the door shut. She paced back and forth in the room, unsure of how much longer she could hold out. Outside, Su Donglin asked in a low voice, Boss Yu, how could you do this? You lied to esteemed Wang Fei. Actually, they'd been stunned when they heard the news as well. They had no idea whether His Highness Duke of Qin had known about esteemed Wang Fei's identity long ago. I didn't lie to her. His Highness must have known everything long ago. Otherwise, why would he work with Gu Beiwei? If His Highness isn't in the army, then he must be in Medical City. Chu Shifeng replied. As he saw it, His Highness was only working with Gu Beiwei to use Gu Beiwei. How could His Highness Duke of Qin ever rely on or value a member of the Shadow Clan? He was simply inviting a wolf into the house. Actually, he'd always harbored suspicions about His Highness Duke of Qin after Gu Beiwei's assassination attempt, but he never dared to voice his suspicions. Moreover, as a subordinate, he had to do his best to persuade his mistress. But things were different now. Han Yunxi's identity perfectly explained His Highness Duke of Qin's strange behavior. Now he was certain that the dark-robed assassin was His Highness. His Highness must have known about Han Yunxi's identity long ago. He must have hidden his identity to assassinate Gu Beiwei because he wanted to keep using Han Yunxi. Unfortunately, Han Yunxi happened to see him that night. Su Donglin shook his head. He didn't agree with Chu Shifeng's guesses. Boss, if that's the case, why did His Highness hide it from you?
Why hasn't he shown himself yet?
It was normal for His Highness Duke of Qin to hide the fact that Chu Shifeng was the head of the Shadow Guard, but he shouldn't have hidden it from Chu Shifeng. Chu Shifeng was clearly using his position to avenge a personal grudge. Chu Shifeng grew angry from embarrassment and gave a cold snort. No matter what, she's our East Qin's enemy. And His Highness's enemy. Perhaps she knew everything long ago and snuck into His Highness's side. Don't forget, she was the one who showed up at the wedding herself. Boss, don't act rashly. Let's wait for His Highness's reply before we discuss it. Su Donglin murmured. Although he was shocked by esteemed Wang Fei's identity, he still remembered how well she treated the Shadow Guard. Inside the room, Han Yunxi was staring blankly at the pinkish-purple letter. Han Yunxi, do you still believe it? She muttered to herself. Long Fei Yi, what should I believe in you? She'd replied to his empty letter because she wanted to imitate his previous one. She was telling him that her feelings for him were the same as his feelings for her. On the night of Gu Beiyue's assassination, Lil Thing had bitten the dark-robed assassin's shoulder. Although Lil Thing's fangs hadn't recovered yet, she'd long smeared blood at dawn on Lil Thing's fangs before coming to Medical City. She hoped it'd be an extra helper in times of danger. It would only take one night for Blood at Dawn to take effect. Blood at Dawn was a new poison from the poison pond. It was very similar to throat sealing at dawn, a commonly used poison in the poison world. It was impossible to tell the difference without careful examination. But there was a world of difference between their antidotes. There was only one antidote for Blood at Dawn, and it was in her hands. On the other hand, the antidote for throat sealing at dawn was very easy to buy. If the dark-robed assassin was Long Fei Yi, he'd quickly discover that the antidote for throat sealing at dawn was ineffective. If he didn't come to her for the antidote, he'd definitely die. If the dark-robed assassin wasn't Long Fei Yi, he'd definitely come to her door to ask for the antidote. Who wasn't afraid of death? The assassin had remained silent until now. No matter how powerful an expert was, it was impossible to detoxify this new type of poison in a single night. Moreover, she'd paid attention to the dark-robed assassin's shoulder that night and hadn't noticed any signs of poisoning. Han Yunxi had long suspected who the assassin was and how he'd managed to detoxify the poison in an instant. She was also certain that the culprit had used Celestial Mountain's swordsmanship techniques to exploit Gu Beiyue's death and sow discord between her and Long Fei Yi. She hadn't said anything because she wanted to beat Long Fei Yi at his own game and lure the snake out of its hole. Secondly, she was still angry at Long Fei Yi. She couldn't accept the fact that Long Fei Yi hadn't told his wife a single thing before announcing his identity to the public. She'd been waiting for him to give her an explanation this entire time. But who knew that she'd received such terrifying news instead? She was actually a descendant of Western Qin's imperial clan. She dearly wished that the news was fake, but how could anyone else know about the phoenix birthmark on her back? Someone must have found out about her identity and confirmed that she had a birthmark on her back. She forced herself to stay calm and collected as she waited for the truth. Chu Shifeng's words had given her the answer she wanted. If her identity hadn't been exposed, would Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin have continued to help Long Fei Yi explain things and help Long Fei Yi keep up the act? Even if it wasn't Long Fei Yi who'd tried to assassinate Gu Beiyue as the East Qin crown prince, Long Fei Yi had deceived Gu Beiyue and her. What kind of good intentions did he have? If he wasn't using her, then what was he? She'd once stood by the window of Leisurely Cloud Pavilion and imagined countless times what kind of woman he'd treat with sincerity and tenderness like water. She'd even believed that lucky woman was herself. But in the end, it was all just a show of using her. What a fool. Was it fated that the princess of Western Qin would never be treated with sincerity by him? Han Yunxi gently lifted her sleeve and looked at the cinnabar mark on her arm. She seemed to understand something and smiled bitterly. After being married for 4 years, this cinnabar mark was probably his true feelings for her. He'd rejected her with all his heart. Her heart was about to break, but Han Yunxi didn't cry. She didn't complain, but only felt bitter and self-mocking. Even when it came to love, she was still stubborn and strong in her bones. She stuffed the pink letter under the teapot and went to open the door, only to find it locked from the outside. Chu Shifeng, open the door. Chu Shifeng. There was clearly someone outside the door, but no one answered her no matter how hard she knocked.
So be it.
She'd wait. Even if she'd been deceived and used, she still had a question to ask Long Fei Yi face to face. She wanted to know everything. Even if my world is about to collapse, I'll wait until I get his answer. Then it'll collapse completely and be destroyed. Actually, the hardest thing to endure wasn't falling apart, but being rational. Sometimes, falling apart was a form of release. Han Yunxi didn't cry or make a fuss. Sitting quietly in her room and waiting was the greatest torment of her life. She was just this kind of woman. Even in desperate straits, she could keep her cool. If such a woman really collapsed one day, what kind of scene would it be? Han Yunxi was waiting for Long Fei Yi, while Chu Shifeng was waiting for Long Fei Yi. Luo Zuishan was burning with anxiety as he tried to find a way to hire people, hoping to find a high-level expert to avoid the shadow guard on the cliff and enter the abyss to tell Gu and Mu Ling everything. Gu and Mu Ling were in the abyss, not daring to waste a second in their search. They had no idea how much of Cloud Realm continent had boiled over. When night fell, the sound of firecrackers rose from outside the medical academy. Very soon, beautiful fireworks bloomed in the air, making it impossible to tell who was celebrating. Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin sat by the door in silence. Both of them were very disappointed. They had no idea that the sound of the fireworks had been heard. They didn't know that someone had lifted the roof tiles and snuck into the room. Chapter 8:12. The sound of bamboo breaking continued, and the fireworks that bloomed in the night sky lit up the dark room from time to time. Han Yunxi sat at the tea table, staring at the letter in a daze. Suddenly, someone covered her mouth from behind. She was so startled that she hurriedly shot out a needle, but the person behind her seemed to know her poison techniques very well. Not only did he avoid her hidden needle, he also restrained her other hand that was about to use poison. She, who didn't know martial arts, would always be at the mercy of an expert's mercy when she encountered a surprise attack. She was in a very bad mood and was too lazy to struggle, so she simply stayed motionless. Unexpectedly, that person ruthlessly tore off her purple muslin outer garment. Han Yunxi was caught off guard. When she reacted, her outer garment had already been torn to shreds and thrown to the ground. She was so shocked that her soul almost left her body. She fiercely struggled, but that person's strength was very great. He firmly restrained her with one hand. He moved close to her ear and whispered, "Don't be afraid. I just want to confirm one thing. I won't hurt you." Even though the breath by her ear was very warm, this voice still made Han Yunxi couldn't help but shiver. It's him, Ning Chung, the head of the D clan. "Bastard, you've already hurt me." Han Yunxi roared in her heart. It was summer, so she really couldn't wear undergarments like other girls. She wore a custom-made chest wrap, a camisole, and a purple muslin outer garment. Now that her outer garment was torn, she was incomparably exposed in front of Ning Chung. If this kind of clothing was in modern times, it would be considered normal. But if Long Fei Yi found out, she couldn't imagine how angry he would be. Very quickly, Han Yunxi returned to her senses. What kind of situation was this? She actually still cared about Long Fei Yi's reaction. Would he really mind? That cold and terrifying face, that pair of monstrous angry eyes, uncontrollably appeared in her mind. At such a critical moment, she actually became absent-minded again. She really couldn't believe that his previous mind, his previous anger, was all an act. Long Fei Yi, when will you come? I have to ask you that question face to face. Han Yunxi quickly regained her senses, but Ning Chung was stunned. The news of unknown origin was so detailed that it almost exposed Han Yunxi's background. Everyone was so shocked that they forgot to question it. The various forces in the world naturally wished for the world to be in chaos, and he needed clear evidence. Chu Yuni had once told him that any Western Qin orphan born as a girl would have a phoenix birthmark on her back. He just wanted to tear off Han Yunxi's outer clothes and lift up her inner clothes to see if she really had a phoenix birthmark. But he never thought that under Han Yunxi's outer clothes, there was actually such a camisole. By now, the calm Ning Cheng had long thrown the phoenix birthmark to the back of his mind. When he met Han Yunxi, his strong self-control seemed to vanish into thin air. This woman had taken too many of his firsts. The first time he'd been splashed with wine, the first time he'd been cursed at, the first time he'd been distracted by her needles. This time, it was his first time as well. This was the first time he'd seen a woman wearing so little. This was the first time he'd held a woman so tightly in his arms. This was the first time he couldn't stop his heart from racing. He couldn't control his eyes as they swept over Han Yunxi's graceful back and rested on the tube top peeking out from beneath the gauze. He seemed to know he shouldn't, but couldn't bear to look away. He hesitated again and again. Suddenly, Han Yunxi viciously stomped down on Ning Cheng's left foot. At the same time, a poisoned needle emerged from the bottom of her shoe and pierced through Ning Cheng's boot to his left foot. Ning Cheng finally recovered his senses. Just as Han Yunxi was about to stomp down on him, he used his right knee to push against Han Yunxi's knee socket. In an instant, Han Yunxi fell to her knees. Ning Cheng kept one hand over her mouth and the other bound her hands as he fell to his knees with her. Han Yunxi struggled desperately and was about to break free from Ning Cheng's grip when Ning Cheng suddenly leaned over and pressed his tall body against hers, forcing her to lie on the ground. Abominable. Han Yunxi had long cursed Ning Cheng's ancestors in her heart. She could guess what this guy wanted to do. Didn't he want to see her birthmark to confirm her identity? Weren't the D clan and the Nether clan jackals of the same lair? They wanted to use the orphan of the Western Qin imperial family to control the emperor and the nobles. Han Yunxi's entire body was on the ground. Ning Cheng, that bastard, was actually on top of her, one hand covering her mouth and the other pressing down on her hands that were tied behind her back. This position wasn't flirtatious at all. It was simply unbearable to look at. Ning Cheng, either you kill me, or I, Han Yunxi, will definitely repay you 100-fold for what you did to me today. Han Yunxi secretly swore in her heart. Han Yunxi stopped struggling and waited. Ning Cheng's hands were busy, so he couldn't tear off her clothes and look at her birthmark. She was going to wait for the poison in his foot to erupt. Let's see who would beg who then. The poison was called E. Once poisoned, one would feel as if they were being burned by a raging fire for a short period of time. Not only would they feel a burning sensation, but their skin would also blister and ulcerate, as if they were being burned by real fire. If he didn't detoxify it in time, Ning Cheng would become a cripple. This poison could even burn his bones. After experiencing several dangerous situations, Han Yunxi's poison needles were all highly toxic. The moment the poison needle entered his foot, Ning Cheng knew that he had been poisoned. How could this poisonous woman's golden needles not be poisonous? How wonderful! He had spent so much effort searching for the golden needles, but in the end, they pierced his body in such a way. The burning sensation became more and more real, but he forcibly ignored the fact that the shadow guard outside could discover the hole in the roof at any time. He had to confirm Han Yunxi's identity as soon as possible. He whispered, "Han Yunxi, I don't mean any harm. I just want to see the birthmark on your back. If you are really a descendant of the Western Qin royal family, then you are the master of the D clan. I am willing to pay the price for my offense today and let you do whatever you want with me.
I will let go of you now. Don't speak.
Nod your head if you agree." Han Yunxi nodded without hesitation. However, just as Ning Cheng let go, she was about to scream. Fortunately, Ning Cheng knew that he was just testing her. He didn't let go of Han Yunxi and covered her mouth in time. "You didn't keep your word," Ning Cheng reprimanded. "Keep my word with you? Can my word be eaten?" Han Yunxi roared in her heart. Once Ning Cheng saw the birthmark on her back and confirmed her identity as a descendant of the Western Qin royal family, would Ning Cheng let her go? Would Ning Cheng take her to the battlefield hang up the Western Qin royal family's military flag, and gather the supporters of the Western Qin royal family to fight against the Long Fei Yi? Of course, she had to scream. Even if the shadow guard rushed in and saw her disheveled clothes, she couldn't let Ning Cheng have his way. Ning Cheng didn't dare to let go of Han Yunxi so easily. The pain in his foot made him dare not delay any longer. He made up his mind and whispered, "Since you don't want to cooperate, then I'm sorry to offend you." Before Han Yunxi could understand what he meant, Ning Cheng bit his sleeve and tore off a strip of cloth. His hands and mouth worked together to wrap the cloth around her hands. Finally, he freed one of her hands. Without hesitation, he lifted up the corner of her clothes. Han Yunxi didn't care about shame or chastity. She buried her head on the ground and closed her eyes. Her heart was cold. Once Ning Cheng kidnapped her, the princess of Western Qin, he could draw out the other forces of the 7 noble families. Even people like Chu Tianyin might betray the Long Fei Yi. When the Long Fei Yi went on a campaign against the Di clan, the war of revenge would evolve into a decisive battle between the orphans of the Eastern and Western Qin royal family. When the time came, she and the Long Fei Yi would be completely at odds. If she didn't die, then he would. Long Fei Yi, will I have the chance to ask that question again? After parting at Tianshan Mountain, we've become old enemies when we meet again. Ning Cheng saw the birthmark. It was light red, like the wings of a phoenix. If he didn't look at it closely, he might not have noticed it. Ning Cheng was stunned at first. Then he smiled foolishly. In the dim light, he revealed a row of white teeth. His smile was especially beautiful. It's her. It's really her. Not long ago, he received the news that Han Yunxi was the descendant of the Western Qin royal family. He was stunned for a long time. He couldn't believe his ears. The woman he tried so hard to kidnap, get rid of, and avenge was actually his master, the one the Di clan had been searching for many years. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was so glad that he didn't hurt her. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to blame himself for the rest of his life. Ning Cheng's excitement was all overflowing in his smile. If his subordinates saw him now, they probably wouldn't recognize him. Did finding the princess of a Western Qin royal family make him so stupid? This wasn't like Ning Cheng at all. Was he really happy just because she was the princess of the Western Qin royal family? Han Yunxi struggled violently. Only then did Ning Cheng come back to his senses. The first thing he did was to pull up her clothes and take off his outerwear to cover her. "Princess, this subordinate has finally found you. There are many things that are hard to explain in a few words. Come back with this subordinate, and this subordinate will slowly report." Ning Cheng's voice became respectful. Han Yunxi's mouth was still covered, so she could only struggle to protest. Who knew that Ning Cheng would say, "Excuse me," and hit the back of her neck with his palm, causing her to faint. Ning Cheng's poisoned foot stomped viciously against the ground, causing him so much pain that his 3 souls and 7 spirits were about to scatter. He'd never knit his brows in the past, but this time he was furrowing his brows. Still, he stomped down again and used the momentum to fly out of the hole in the roof with Han Yunxi in his arms. The fireworks were still going on, but Chu Shifeng and Su Donglin were still lost in their own thoughts. They didn't notice anything strange about the roof. Just before daybreak, Chu Shifeng received a letter from His Highness, Duke of Qin. Chu Shifeng's previous letter had been sent to the army, then sent by the Shadow Guard to Long Fei Yi. It took a long time, so it wasn't clear whether the Long Fei Yi had received it or not. The letter he'd just received wasn't Long Fei's reply, but something Long Fei had sent to him after Han Yunxi's identity was exposed. Chu Shifeng quickly opened the letter, only to see a single line of words. "Protect her completely, or else spare the consequences. Your lordship will be there soon." Chu Shifeng gave a start. Su Donglin scooted over and blurted out, "His Highness, he still wants to protect esteemed Wang Fei." Chu Shifeng slowly turned back to look at Su Donglin in disbelief. Su Donglin suddenly rose to his feet and opened the door. He had to explain things to esteemed Wang Fei. But when he rushed in, He saw that there was no one inside. Instead, the roof tiles had been moved aside to reveal a large hole. Boss. Boss, bad news. Su Donglin cried out in fear. Chapter 813. Chu Shifeng rushed into the room and saw that it was empty, leaving him dumbfounded. No matter whether His Highness Duke of Qin wanted to protect this woman or not, she couldn't disappear. Chu Shifeng finally realized his negligence. He'd brought the Shadow Guard with him, but had only arranged for the Shadow Guard to guard the doors and windows. He'd neglected the roof. Moreover, the fireworks just then hadn't aroused his suspicions. He slapped his own mouth. Damn it. Su Donglin searched around the room before he found something. Frightened, he cried out, boss. Chu Shifeng chased after him and saw the object on the ground. He was scared out of his wits as well. It was none other than Han Yunxi's torn purple muslin robes. Boss, esteemed Wang Fei, she couldn't have Su Donglin was incoherent. Chu Shifeng raged. She's not esteemed Wang Fei. Hurry and find her. I'll go find Department Head Shun right now and ask him to seal the city gates. Hurry, and bring people to search the area.
Hurry.
Boss, shouldn't we send a message to His Highness first? Su Donglin asked. Chu Shifeng was extremely irritated.
I know.
The two of them split up. Su Donglin was about to leave when he turned back and reminded, Boss, no matter who she is, His Highness will protect her. She's still our mistress. Impossible. Chu Shifeng raged. Boss, His Highness's letter is still in your hands. Su Donglin said. His Highness has esteemed Wang Fei in his heart. You've been with them for the longest time, so you should know better than us. His Highness is East Qin's only hope. He's going to revive East Qin and become its emperor. How could he fall for Western Qin's princess? If he wants to revive East Qin, he'll have to get revenge first and destroy the remnants of Western Qin. Han Yunxi is the first. Even if His Highness wants to protect her, he must have other motives. It's definitely not a love affair. Chu Shifeng was both angry and anxious as he roared. Why aren't you looking for her yet? Hurry. Su Donglin was scared out of his wits. He turned around and ran. Soon, Vice Academy Head Shun ordered all 4 gates of Medical City to be sealed. No matter what the reason was, no one was allowed to leave, even if they had the dean's or elder's orders. Soon, the Shadow Guard and the medical guards broke the silence of the night in Medical City. No one knew what had happened. They only knew that an important person had been kidnapped. Tang Li and Ning Jing were in an inn. The two of them had been in a cold war since then. Although they still slept on the same bed, they had slept with their backs facing each other for several nights. Banging on the door woke them up. The guards came in and searched the room, but they found nothing before leaving. Tang Li soon found out from the innkeeper that the guards were here to search for someone. Who is this important person? Is there a need to mobilize so many people? Tang Li asked. I don't know. If it's not someone from the medical school, then it's someone from some big family. The city gates are all sealed, the shopkeeper replied. Ning Jing stood at the top of the stairs, her face a little pale. She knew it was Ning Cheng who had kidnapped the person. Since Ning Cheng had done that, it meant he'd seen the phoenix birthmark. Han Yunxi really was the princess of Western Qin. The D clan had finally found their master. But no one expected it to be Han Yunxi. Ning Jing suddenly wanted to run over and see Ning Cheng. Heaven knows what he's feeling right now. Tang Li turned around just in time to see Ning Jing. He glanced at her before heading out the door again. Ning Jing was planning to ignore him. It was good that Tang Li was going out. She could pay her respects to her master as well. But then she thought of something and chased after Tang Li. Where do you think you're going in the middle of the night? Tang Li ignored her. He'd wanted to leave for a long time already. When he found out about Han Yunxi's identity, the first thing he thought of was Mute Granny. When Long Fei Yi imprisoned Mute Granny in the U prison, he was the one who kept watch over her. At that time, he couldn't figure out why Long Fei Yi had secretly imprisoned an old granny. Later, Long Fei Yi talked to Mute Granny about something, and Mute Granny committed suicide. Tang Li was almost certain that Long Fei Yi had known about Han Yunqi's identity for a long time and had been deliberately hiding it. Not only did he hide it from Han Yunqi, but he also hid it from everyone. Mute Granny's suicide must have been because Long Fei Yi had said something. What Tang Li didn't understand was, other than Mute Granny and Long Fei Yi, who else in this world knew about Han Yunqi's identity? Gu Beiwe? His mind was in a mess. For a moment, he couldn't accept that his sister-in-law was the princess of Western Qin. However, he couldn't bear to hate Han Yunqi. He also didn't know why he was going to the medical school. It was a good opportunity to ask who had been kidnapped. Tang Li stopped for a moment and continued to walk without saying a word. Ning Jing's anger rushed to her heart. She reached out and blocked Tang Li. You still want to look for Han Yunqi? It's so late, and you're still going to look for her. Don't you have any shame? She clearly guessed that he was going to ask about who had been kidnapped, but she deliberately pretended to be jealous. So what if I am? Is it any of your business? Tang Li retorted. I'm your wife. How is it any of my business? Ning Jing retorted angrily. She couldn't tell whether she was pretending or really angry. Wife. Tang Li laughed. Ning Jing, so you still know that you're my wife. I thought that you were unwilling to admit this after getting married. Oh, right. Tang Li, only now know that my wife is a descendant of the 7 noble families. Haha. Ning Jing looked into Tang Li's eyes and asked seriously, Tang Li, do you really think of me as your wife? Tang Li avoided her gaze. He didn't know why, but he didn't dare to look at her. He walked around Ning Jing and still wanted to leave. Ning Jing suddenly grabbed his hand. Tang Li, I was wrong. I shouldn't have hit you. I shouldn't have doubted you. I was wrong. Tang Li, Medical City won't be peaceful. Cloud Realm won't be peaceful either. Let's go back to the Tang clan and get away from all of this, okay? Ning Jing said these words in her heart. Unfortunately, Tang Li didn't want to leave. He didn't want the Cold War to end, so he said lightly, if you want to go back, I'll send someone to send you back first. With that, he walked away without looking back, leaving Ning Jing standing alone in the dark night. Only when Tang Li's figure disappeared at the end of the road did Ning Jing regain her senses. Her usually shrewd eyes were dim, and there was even a trace of sadness in them. Tang Li had already left. What else could she do? She could only hurry over to Ning Cheng's place to take a look. The entire medical city was searching for people, but Ning Cheng had a place to hide. He hid Han Yunqi in an unknown residence. By the time Han Yunqi woke up in a daze, it was already noon of the next day. She found herself lying on the bed and covered with a silk quilt. She gave a cold snort and sat up abruptly. Only then did she realize that she was still wrapped in the outer coat Ning Cheng gave her last night. The clothes underneath were also intact. Princess, you're awake. Princess, drink some water first. Breakfast is already prepared. The 2 servant girls waiting on the side hurried over to serve her. Han Yunqi flung the cup away and said angrily, Where's Ning Cheng? As soon as she said that, the sound of Ning Cheng kneeling came from behind the screen. This subordinate, Ning Cheng, the head of the D clan, greets the princess. Long live the princess. Last night, after he had brought her back, he had been guarding behind the screen all night. Han Yunqi almost didn't understand that Ning Cheng was kneeling to greet her. She hurriedly got off the bed, wrapped her clothes tightly around herself, and rushed over. She saw Ning Cheng kneeling behind the screen. He bowed deeply, his forehead still touching the floor. Recalling the events of last night, Han Yunqi's anger flared up. She said coldly, and raised her head. Ning Cheng immediately raised his head. That face with thick eyebrows and big eyes was handsome and dashing. Han Yunqi sized him up seriously. Suddenly, she raised her hand and slapped him hard. After the loud slap, the whole room was silent. Ning Cheng was startled. His respectful gaze suddenly turned cold. The side of his face burned and immediately turned red. It was obvious that Han Yunqi used a lot of strength. Facing Ning Cheng's cold gaze, Han Yunqi wasn't afraid at all. She didn't just want to humiliate Ning Cheng. She simply wanted to kill him. Coldly, She stared at him and angrily scolded, "Shameless." Only then did Ning Qing understand that Han Yunxi hit him because of last night's incident. He lowered his eyes. Last night's incident was this subordinate's offense. "Princess, please punish me." Han Yunxi then raised her hand to slap him again. Ning Qing didn't dodge. Han Yunxi wasn't joking with him. She really wanted to hit him. Since Ning Qing pretended to be so respectful, then she would cooperate with him to the end. She wanted to see how long he could endure it. She gathered her strength. Just as she was about to fiercely slap him, she inadvertently caught a glimpse of Ning Cheng's left foot. She remembered the poison from last night. Since last night, Ning Cheng's foot should have blisters or even ulcerated. He was still wearing shoes. Didn't he feel pain? Han Yunxi put down her hand and walked behind him. She looked at him with interest. "Princess, please punish me," Ning Qing said again. "Take off your shoes. Let me take a look." Han Yunxi leisurely sat down at the side. Ning Qing lowered his eyes. She couldn't tell what he was thinking. He sat down and really took off his shoes. His movements were quick and nimble. As soon as he took off his shoes, they saw that the golden needle that pierced his foot last night had disappeared. His entire foot was red and swollen, as if it had been burned by a raging fire. Several large blisters had appeared, and one area had even ulcerated. It was badly mutilated. Because he had taken off his shoes too quickly, he had even scraped one of the blisters and oozed pus. The two servant girls were extremely distressed. Han Yunxi, on the other hand, was admiring it with interest. She said, "All right, your punishment is to cripple this foot. By tomorrow morning, the poison will enter your bone marrow and shatter it." A complicated look flashed past Ning Cheng's eyes. He lowered his head and didn't say anything. "Ning Cheng, what do you think of this punishment?" Han Yunxi deliberately provoked him. She had to force Ning Cheng's true colors out. How noble could the D clan's Ning clan be compared to the Nether clan's Chu clan? This subordinate has offended the princess and deserves 10,000 deaths. However, Ning Qing trailed off before finally looking up at her. "However, can this subordinate owe you this debt first? It won't be too late to punish this subordinate after this subordinate assists the princess in wiping away the disgrace of our Western Qin and reviving our country. When the time comes, even if the princess wants this subordinate's life, this subordinate will offer it up personally." Han Yunxi laughed coldly in her heart. Once Western Qin was revived, she'd be nothing more than a puppet. Just like Tianning's young emperor and Empress Dowager Chu, they were both at the mercy of Ning Cheng, the prince regent. She leisurely drank her tea and waved a hand. "This Wang Fei doesn't accept credit. Mo's Weibo account. I'm Han Mo, welcome." Chapter 814. No credit at all? If things didn't go well, he would be crippled. Although he should be anxious, Ning Cheng's lips silently curved into a beautiful arc. He nodded. "All right, this subordinate accepts the punishment." Ning Cheng really didn't care about his unbearably burning feet. He just sat on the ground. He had been excited all night, and it was difficult for him to hide the joy in his eyes. He said, "Your Highness, this subordinate has been looking for you all this time." Back then, before he could finish speaking, Han Yunxi interrupted him. "Don't blame me for not warning you. Once this pi poison enters your bones, it won't just cripple your feet. The poison will spread from your feet to all the bones in your body." Ning Cheng was stunned at first, but then he laughed out loud. He said, "Since your Highness has the heart to remind me, you must have the heart to spare this subordinate. This subordinate may be so bold as to ask your Highness how to spare this subordinate's life?" Han Yunxi frowned and said coldly, "Ning Cheng, I'm not joking with you. Your Highness, if this subordinate dies, who will avenge you, restore your country, and conquer the world for you?" Ning Cheng laughed and then became serious. "Your Highness, if you can't credit, how about we change the punishment?" The two servant girls on the side looked on. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have dared to believe that Ning Wang could laugh so happily. It had to be known that in the past, even if there was a joyous occasion, Ning Wang would never laugh. Everyone in the D clan was very happy that the Western Qin princess had been found. But Ningguang's temperament shouldn't have changed so much, right? What was he so happy about? Let go of this princess. As long as you send this princess back to the medical academy, I'll immediately give you the antidote. Han Yunxi became serious. Otherwise, there's no room for discussion. Just wait for your death. Han Yunxi's words were like a basin of ice water that extinguished all of Ning Cheng's enthusiasm and excitement. The smile that had been on his face all night instantly stiffened. Clearly, Han Yunxi's attitude was beyond his expectations. This woman really wasn't joking with him. But what did she mean? Shouldn't she be proud of being the only princess of Western Qin? Shouldn't she hate Long Fei Yi? Shouldn't she be more anxious than him to take revenge and restore her country? She actually wanted to return to medical school. Could it be that she was still thinking about her love affair with the enemy of Western Qin, the Long Fei Yi? It had to be known that Western Qin's princess becoming the East Qin Crown Prince's princess was a great shame for Western Qin. Ning Cheng, the poison in your foot won't wait for you. You don't have much time to consider. Han Yunxi said coldly. Han Yunxi, do you know what your identity means? Do you know how heavy the task is on your shoulders? Ning Cheng finally said angrily. I don't know, and I don't want to know. I only know that you offended me and kidnapped me. Han Yunxi didn't back down and closed in. Let me go back, or else you'll have to bear the consequences. Princess, Long Fei Yi is the biggest enemy of Western Qin's royal family. You should be ashamed of being his princess. Princess didn't know this before, so please don't call yourself princess in the future. Ning Cheng angrily said word by word. As for this subordinate offending you, this subordinate will give you an explanation right now. As he said this, he suddenly raised his sword to cut off his foot. Cutting off his foot was to atone for his crime and also to save his life. Without his foot, the poison wouldn't spread, and he could save his life. Han Yunxi was a bit surprised, but she didn't stop him. She didn't believe that Ning Cheng would really do it. Who would have thought that Ning Cheng would really do it? Han Yunxi's heart skipped a beat, but she still didn't stop him. What did cutting off his foot count for? She wanted to kill him last night. Unexpectedly, at this critical moment, the door was suddenly kicked open. Ning Jing, who had been eavesdropping outside the door, rushed in and kicked Ning Cheng's sharp sword to the side. Brother, are you crazy? Han Yunxi was very surprised that Ning Jing would appear here. Wasn't Tang Li and this woman always inseparable? Where was Tang Li? It's none of your business. Get out. Ning Cheng coldly rebuked. Although Ning Jing was usually dissatisfied with Ning Cheng, she absolutely recognized him as her brother when it came to major issues. Looking at Ning Cheng's festering foot, her heart ached. How could her proudest brother, the most respected patriarch of the D clan, be hurt and humiliated by a woman like this? She threw caution to the wind and didn't leave. Instead, she avoided Ning Cheng's hand and fiercely pushed Han Yunxi. Caught off guard, Han Yunxi backed up a few steps and almost fell over. Han Yunxi grew angry as well. Are you guys done acting? The Nether clan has already played the game of seizing the Son of Heaven to command his vassals, but you're still doing it. Aren't you tired of it? Revenge and reviving the country are all my own matters. I don't need you to remind me, much less force me. Ning Cheng, you want to use me as an excuse to recruit soldiers and buy horses to help your D-clan fight against the Long Fei Yi? Don't even think about it. You should give up on that idea while it's still early. The sword in Ning Cheng's hand clattered to the ground. His handsome brows were furrowed tightly, like a string stretched taut to its limit that could snap at any moment. Ning Jing was furious. Han Yunxi, do you know how much my big brother suffered when he took on the D clan's heavy responsibility at the age of 13? He took control of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium and the Ning clan troops at the same time. Do you know how many times he was trampled under the iron hooves of Northern Li's cavalry? Do you know how many of his ribs were broken before he established the Ning clan troops and took control of Tianning's northwestern troops? Do you know that my big sister Ning abandoned her childhood sweetheart and married into the palace at 15 to be trampled upon by that old Emperor Tianhui? Do you know how many people in the D clan have paid a price that they could not bear, but had to bear all these years? Do you know that it's all for you, for the sake of Western Qin's imperial clan? If my D clan had selfish motives, why would we wait until now? With my big brother's power, the strength of my Ning clan troops, and Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's wealth, we could have swallowed up Tianning years ago and dominated the region. Why wait until Tianning's internal strife? Why tangle with the Chu clan for the sake of your whereabouts? Han Yunxi, how could you? How could you compare us to the Chu clan? How could you slander us like this? Ning Jing rarely cried, but now her face was streaked with tears. Han Yunxi, protecting and pledging loyalty to our D clan is our supreme mission and glory. Even if you want to be a Western Qin princess, you can't trample on it. You can't. Han Yunxi gave a start. Something seemed to have hit her in the heart and caught her off guard. And also, Han Yunxi, do you know what happened to the Shadow Clan? After 5 years of war between Eastern and Western Qin, only the Nether, Di, He, Bai, Feng, and Li clans of the 7 noble families retained their strength. But only one member of the Shadow Clan remained. Do you know why? The Shadow Clan Gu Beiyue's gentle, calm face surfaced in Han Yunxi's mind again.
Why?
She muttered to herself. Because the Shadow Clan used their lives to protect Western Qin's imperial clan. Back then, the first to be destroyed wasn't the D clan, but the Shadow Clan. After the East Qin army attacked Western Qin's imperial palace, they slaughtered the entire palace for 3 days and 3 nights. The Shadow Clan could have escaped, but not a single one of them left. Every time the East Qin army killed a member of the Western Qin imperial clan, they had to kill the Shadow Guard who protected them first. There was only one member of the Shadow Clan left, that Shadow Guard who carried your grandmother away. He was the only one left. Han Yunxi, since you are the descendant of Western Qin's imperial clan, you have to take on the heavy responsibility you deserve. Even if you let down everyone, you can't let down the Shadow Clan. Ning Jing finished speaking, but her face was still filled with anger. Ning Chen was planning on taking Han Yunxi away first, and then slowly telling her about the past grudges. He never thought that Han Yunxi would have such an indifferent attitude. He didn't chase Ning Jing away, but looked at Han Yunxi with eyes that had recovered their usual coldness. In the silence of the room, the Ning siblings stared at Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi's face was expressionless, but her heart couldn't calm down. She wasn't the real Han Yunxi, nor did she have any feelings for Western Qin. She could understand the Western Qin imperial clan's hatred and the East Qin imperial clan's vengeance. But she couldn't feel it. After hearing Ning Jing's words, her heart couldn't help but clench. She saw not only the hatred between the two countries, but also the bitter price that both sides had paid over the years. They wanted revenge not only for the Eastern and Western Qin imperial clans, but also for the countless enemies in both camps. The destruction of countries, clans, and families. Chu Shifeng, for example, hated her and all the forces loyal to the Western Qin imperial clan. They wanted to restore their country, not just for the Eastern and Western Qin imperial clans, but for the beliefs, and hopes of both sides. This was no longer a matter between the two imperial clans. Ning Jing was right. She had no right to trample on the D clan's loyalty and honor. No one had the right to look down on another's beliefs. The Western Qin imperial clan was the D clan's belief. She wasn't a real princess, but she had this unique identity. That meant she had to take responsibility for it. She didn't have the selfish right to disappoint and to spare the people who'd been bitterly searching for this identity all these years. But while she was Western Qin's princess, she was also herself. She had once hoped to join hands with the Long Fei Yi to conquer Cloud Realm continent and establish their own country. They could get rid of all the injustices and truly benefit the innocent people. But she couldn't sacrifice herself to restore the glory of a Western Qin country she had no feelings for or understood. She didn't think she was that great. Moreover, she wasn't planning to completely break off relations with the Long Fei Yi. He still owed her an explanation, and she still had questions to ask. She didn't want to be enemies on the battlefield the next time they met at Celestial Mountain. Even if the Long Fei Yi had used her, even if the Long Fei Yi saw her as an old enemy, she still had to get to the bottom of this question. In the silence of the room, Han Yunxi fell to the ground, caught between a rock and a hard place. For some reason, Gu Beiwe's gentle, quiet face surfaced in her mind again. His warmth was like an April spring breeze that could soothe all her worries and unease. Gu Beiwe, just how much of the truth do you know? Do you also have the heart to take revenge and restore your country? Seeing Han Yunxi's silence, Ning Jing grew anxious. Han Yunxi, she said angrily, you can't still be thinking about the Long Fei Yi, right? I don't mind telling you that the Wind Clan has already appeared in the world, and their leader is rushing to the battlefield. The Wind Clan is skilled in Chimenduanjia and troop formations. With their help, the Long Fei Yi won't be able to take Tianning's southern regions for at least half a year. Cold laughter. Ning Jing lowered her voice. Also, the Northernly cavalry is in the hands of the Wind Clan. After half a year, they'll recover their strength and invade the south en masse. The Long Fei Yi will lose for sure. The Wind Clan. Han Yunxi's heart grew cold. After all, the Wind Clan was the prime suspect for the assassination of Gu Beiwe. Chapter 815. The Foam Clan. The Northernly Cavalry. These two words woke Han Yunxi up from her desperate situation. She almost jumped out of her chair. She was so shocked that she couldn't hide her shocked expression. Ning Cheng and Ning Jing mistakenly thought that she was shocked by the news and realized that they had enough power to contend with Long Fei Yi. In fact, apart from being shocked, Han Yunxi also wanted to laugh. She wanted to look up to the sky and laugh 3 times. The Foam Clan. She didn't expect that the Foam Clan would appear at this juncture and hook up with Ning Cheng. It was really a waste of effort to find iron scraps in the middle of nowhere. The Foam Clan was familiar with astronomy and geography. They were proficient in Chimenduanjia and had the ability to control the wind. This was what Long Fei Yi had told her. The first time she came into contact with the Imperial Wind Technique should be on Fishing Boat Island. At that time, Long Fei Yi was furious and ordered the Bailey Navy to surround Fishing Boat Island. He wanted to trap Jun Yixia on Fishing Boat Island. However, a poisonous fog suddenly appeared on Fishing Boat Island. The Bailey Navy was in chaos and Jun Yixia was rescued by someone. She and Long Fei Yi rushed to the scene, but it was too late. Fishing Boat Island was windy all year round. It was difficult for the fog to gather, let alone last for a night. Therefore, the possibility of poisoning in the fog was almost zero. This was why they were confident in trapping Jun Yixia on the island, even though they knew that Jun Yixia was proficient in the art of poison. At that time, she was puzzled. Later, when Long Fei Yi mentioned the Imperial Wind Technique to her, she suspected that the person who rescued Jun Yixia was most likely a member of the Foam Clan. Moreover, there was a very important clue. Poisoning such a large amount of fog was difficult even for her. Thus, she and Long Fei Yi deduced that the person who saved Jun Yixia was most likely better at poison than Jun Yixia and herself. In the entire poison world, there was only one suspect, the former sect master of the 100 Poison Sect, Jun Yixia's master. Prior to this incident, Jun Yixia was targeted by Medical City because he cured Long Tianma's Gu. Medical City began investigating 100 Poison Sect, but unfortunately, they found nothing. Long Fei Yi and Elder Wang from Medicine City tried to arrange spies to infiltrate 100 Poison Sect, but they were unable to find anything. To this day, Han Yunxi still didn't know who had poisoned Long Tianma and caused Long Tianma's big belly disease to relapse. However, back then, Gu could tell at a glance that Long Fei Yi had been poisoned and deliberately had Luo Zuishan blow the matter up. She had asked Gu and learned that he had learned the art of poison Gu from Gu Yuntian's secret room. The art of poison Gu was a secret art of the Poison Sect. If he hadn't learned it from Gu Yuntian's books, then it was very likely that he had learned it from a direct descendant of the Poison Sect through word of mouth. Where had Jun Yixia learned it? It was very likely that his master had taught him. In other words, his master was very close to the Poison Sect. In summary, Jun Yixie's master was very likely related to both the Wind Clan and the Poison Sect's direct descendants. Moreover, when Han Yunxi was lost in the fog, she had poisoned herself. The mysterious poison's master she dueled with was extremely skilled and had dispelled her poison in an instant. Even if she used a new type of poison, it was still dispelled instantly. Han Yunxi couldn't figure it out at first, but later she realized that her poison hadn't been dispelled, but taken in. The second level of the poison storage space allowed one to suck in any poisons that were hostile to oneself into the space and make it their own. Anyone with a poison storage space had to be a direct descendant of the poison sect. No matter what relationship this mysterious poison's master had with Lady Lingyu from the City of Daughters, one thing was certain. They were targeting Grand Concubine Yi and Long Fei Ye's origins. Not long ago, the dark-robed assassin who'd tried to kill Gu Beiwei had also dispelled the poison in his shoulder in an instant. That was a poison grown from the poison pond. No matter how skilled he was, it was impossible to dispel the poison instantly. Thus, Han Yunxi was certain that the dark-robed assassin had a poison storage space and was a direct descendant of the poison sect. The dark-robed assassin had purposely used Kenzo's swordplay in front of everyone to imitate Long Fei Yi. His true goal wasn't Gu Beiwei, but to make her misunderstand Long Fei Yi and sow discord between them. Jun Yixie's master was related to the Wind Clan and the Poison Sect's direct descendants. The mysterious poison's master at Lost Illusory Lake had a poison storage space and was a direct descendant of the Poison Sect. The dark-robed assassin had a poison storage space and was a direct descendant of the Poison Sect. Given Lil Thing's personality, it wouldn't let go of anyone who dared to hurt Gu Beiwei no matter the price. However, Lil Thing didn't attack a second time. If Han Yunxi wasn't wrong, Lil Thing was afraid of that person. Who else but a direct descendant of the Poison Sect could make Lil Thing so afraid? Based on these three things, it was highly likely that Jun Yixie's master, the mysterious poison's master, and the dark-robed assassin were the same person. He was a direct descendant of the Poison Sect, a descendant of the Wind Clan, and her family. Han Yunxi's identity as a direct descendant of the Poison Sect was already public knowledge. Why didn't the dark-robed assassin acknowledge her? Why did he still want to hurt Gu Beiwei? The Wind Clan had always been loyal to Western Qin's Imperial Clan and were allies with the Shadow Clan. However, the dark-robed assassin didn't stop after seeing Gu Beiwei use his shadow arts. Instead, he intensified his attacks until Gu Beiwei was dead.
Why?
There was only one reason. The Wind Clan had already betrayed Western Qin's Imperial Clan, just like the Nether Clan. He'd investigated Long Fei Ye's origins, refused to acknowledge her, betrayed Western Qin's Imperial Clan, and even colluded with the D Clan. What were his motives? Han Yunxi had calmed down over the past few days, but that wasn't all. She was also pondering a question she'd been unable to solve for a long, long time. Who was her father? Lady Tianxin was a descendant of Western Qin's Imperial Clan, which meant that her father was a direct descendant of the Poison Sect. Was Lady Tianxin's death an accident or murder? The daughters of Western Qin's Imperial Clan all had a phoenix birthmark. Her father and Lady Tianxin had been intimate, so he must have seen the phoenix birthmark on her back. If he knew the origin of the phoenix birthmark, then he would know Lady Tianxin's identity, which meant he'd know her identity. A few days ago, the person who'd announced her identity to the world hadn't just announced it, but also mentioned the phoenix birthmark. He even knew that Lady Tianxin was the Mu clan's Mu Xian. It was very likely that the person who knew so much was her father. Han Yunxi had come to a terrifying conclusion after mulling it over. Her father wasn't just a direct descendant of the Poison Sect, he was also a descendant of the Wind Clan. He'd investigated Long Fei Ye's origins, killed the Shadow Clan, then refused to acknowledge her. He'd even announced her identity and pretended to side with the D Clan, who were truly loyal to Western Qin's Imperial Clan. His goal couldn't be clearer. He wanted to sow discord between Long Fei Yi and her, so that she and Long Fei Yi would be at odds. At the same time, he'd deceived the D Clan. Han Yunxi could already foresee that in the near future, This father she'd never met before would step forward and put on a bitter father-daughter show with her. She was the princess of Western Qin, and her father, the head of the Wind clan, was the rightful ruler of Western Qin's imperial clan. Although it was all conjecture and hypothesis, Han Yunqi trusted her own intuition. Few women were as rational as she was. She had 90% of her rationality, and the remaining 10% was her intuition. She trusted her rationality, but she was willing to trust her intuition just this once. She firmly believed that her guess wasn't wrong this time. There was a huge conspiracy behind all of this, a scheme to reap the benefits of the fisherman's quarrel. That black-robed assassin couldn't have imagined that his shoulder would be exposed. In a moment of desperation, he must have been able to distinguish between blood at dawn and sealed throat at dawn, then stored them in his poison storage space. Without the detox system's help, Han Yunqi wouldn't have been able to immediately determine that the poison in his shoulder was gone. How could the black-robed assassin know that she was a transmigrator who not only had a poison storage space, but also a detox system that could identify poisons? Han Yunqi looked at Ning Cheng and Ning Jing with a complicated expression. How should she explain this to the siblings so that they would believe her? The grudges between the Western Qin and Eastern Qin imperial clans, whether it was revenge or restoration, they had to be fought openly, right? Could she temporarily put aside this national grudge and expose the Wind clan's big fox? Han Yunqi, think about it carefully. Whether you agree or not, you don't have a choice. Ning Jing said coldly. All right, I'll think about it. Han Yunqi finally compromised. She really needed time to think about how to persuade the D clan and how to beat them at their own game. When she said this, Ning Jing secretly let out a sigh of relief. She glanced at Ning Cheng and timidly retreated. She knew that she had overstepped her boundaries. Even after Ning Jing left, Ning Cheng was still coldly staring at Han Yunqi. Han Yunqi's mental strength was very good. Even if MT Tai collapsed in front of her, she would still be calm and collected. But right now, she was being stared at by Ning Cheng. She took out the antidote from her medical bag. Here. Your crime of offending, you owe it. This princess will calculate the interest. Ning Cheng took it and expressionlessly turned to leave without saying a word. But when he reached the door, he turned back to look at her, his eyes still cold. Han Yunqi thought that he was going to say something, but who knew that he still didn't say anything? He looked at her deeply before turning to leave. If it wasn't for Ning Jing's true feelings, Han Yunqi wouldn't have so easily believed in the D clan's loyalty. She also wouldn't have believed in this bad guy's loyalty. One had to know that when they first met, Han Yunqi's impression of him was very
bad.
Ning Cheng walked away step by step with his hands behind his back. No one saw that he was playing with a golden needle in his hand. It was the golden needle that Han Yunqi had pierced into his foot. The appearance of the Foam clan made Han Yunqi, who was already unable to calm down again. She could temporarily not entangle herself with the unresolvable grievances between the Eastern and Western Qin. For the time being, she didn't have to face a dilemma. She told herself that she didn't care about anything else. She had to take revenge for Gu Beiwei first and expose the Foam clan's conspiracy first. Han Yunqi thought, how would Long Fei Yi view the assassination of Gu Beiwei? Would he be able to discover the conspiracy behind the scenes?
What is he doing right now?
Currently, Long Fei Yi had just arrived at Medical City. He headed straight for the medical academy and rushed to Han Yunqi's room. He'd long received Su Donglin's secret missive and knew that Han Yunqi had been kidnapped. Chu Shifeng, Su Donglin, and a group of shadow guards were all kneeling by the door. Su Donglin was still clutching the purple muslin robe in his hands, not daring to approach. Chapter 816. Silence reigned in the courtyard as the shadow guard knelt on the ground. Su Donglin knelt in the crowd, while Chu Shifeng knelt in front of the group as their leader. Originally, Long Fei would have arrived by nightfall at the earliest, but he'd saved an entire day's worth of time and arrived early. His body was covered in dust, and his face was weary. Stubble had grown out of his beard, But none of this could hide his towering rage. He never showed his emotions on his face, but this time, his anger was written all over his face, and he did not hold back. He stared fixedly at the closed doors in silence. His heart was in a state of panic, but he still held onto a sliver of hope. He hoped that the person had already been found and was waiting for him in the room. After parting ways at Celestial Mountain, he'd spent day and night hoping to see her again and hug her tightly. Nobody knew how unaccustomed he was to days without her by his side. He'd already abandoned her once, so he was afraid. Moreover, she was in great danger this time. Now that her identity had been exposed, how many people in the East Qin camp wanted her life? How many people in the Western Qin camp wanted to use her as a puppet? Even now, he was unable to determine which side had kidnapped her. Chu Shifeng, you better have found her already. Long Fei finally spoke up, his voice as cold as the icy waters of a snowy mountain, piercing straight into one's heart and bones. Chu Shifeng's heart was filled with resentment and indignation, but all his anger was extinguished by fear and reverence as soon as he saw his master. Even his heart was trembling. To reply, Your Highness, this subordinate still hasn't found esteemed Wang Fei. With his last hopes dashed, Long Fei's dark eyes were filled with rage. He walked step by step towards Chu Shifeng until he was right in front of him. Long Fei's shoes almost touched Chu Shifeng's fingers, but he subconsciously withdrew his hand. Even he didn't know what he was afraid of. You were the one who told her that your lordship long knew of her identity? Long Fei's voice was very calm, devoid of any emotion. Chu Shifeng understood his master all too well. The calmer he was, the angrier he was. He had read Su Donglin's letter to His Highness Duke of Qin. Su Donglin had clearly explained the entire situation and accused him of acting on his own initiative, going against his superiors, and placing esteemed Wang Fei under house arrest. Yes, he admitted honestly. Just as he was about to raise his head, the Duke of Qin suddenly kicked him hard on the chin, sending him flying backward. With a bang, Chu Shifeng's body slammed open the door, and he was flung inside. All the shadow guards were even more terrified and lowered their heads even more. Even Su Donglin hid the purple muslin robe and didn't dare to make a sound. Su Donglin had mentioned everything in his letter, except for this purple robe. No one dared to look back, but stepped aside to make a path. Long Fei walked step by step into the room before stopping in front of Chu Shifeng again. Chu Shifeng was sprawled on the ground, blood dripping from his mouth. Still, he climbed to his feet and respectfully knelt in front of Long Fei. But he'd hardly knelt when Long Fei kicked him in the chin again, sending him flying. Who told you that your lordship knew of her identity long ago? Chu Shifeng crashed into the tea table behind him and landed heavily on the ground amidst the broken tea set. Fresh blood poured from his mouth without end. Long Fei's icy eyes were frighteningly cold. He didn't say a word, making him seem like the most emotionless and cruel deity in the world. He stared coldly at the heavily injured Chu Shifeng, who grit his teeth and tried to crawl to his feet again. But this time, Long Fei didn't give him a chance. He simply grabbed Chu Shifeng by the throat and lifted him into the air. He glared angrily at Chu Shifeng's eyes, but Chu Shifeng only hung his head, afraid to meet his gaze. Long Fei finally spoke up. Answer your lordship. He was about to tighten his grip when Su Donglin and the rest of the Shadow Guard rushed in to plead for leniency. Master, please show mercy and give Commander Chu a chance to atone for his crimes with meritorious service. With just a single request, everyone began to kowtow loudly with their heads banging against the ground. But Long Fei turned a deaf ear to their pleas and didn't stop. He had painstakingly concealed the truth for so long, even going as far as to lie to Han Yunxi. But Chu Shifeng had ruined everything with a single sentence of his own accord. He couldn't imagine how Han Yunxi had listened to Chu Shifeng's words after Gu Beiwei met with misfortune. It'd be strange if she didn't suspect him of using her. He could bear the hatred of everyone in the world, but he could not bear her hatred. Seeing that Chu Shifeng was about to be strangled to death, Su Donglin couldn't help but rush over and grab his master's hand. Your Highness, esteemed Wang Fei's gone missing. We're all in the wrong. If you want to kill Commander Chu, why don't you kill us as well? Wang Fei suddenly laughed out loud. Are you threatening your lordship? This subordinate doesn't dare. Su Donglin was frightened to death.
Fine.
Wait until your lordship kills him. Then I'll take care of you all. Wang Fei said coldly. Hearing this, Chu Shifeng couldn't help but raise his head to meet Wang Fei's icy gaze. Wang Fei tossed him aside and demanded, What? Now you know you're going to admit your wrongs. He'd been here for so long and kicked Chu Shifeng so many times, but the man hadn't admitted a single wrong, or begged for mercy. This was simply adding oil to the fire, seeking death. Your Highness, if you want to kill me or scrape me, do as you please. This subordinate has no complaints. Please don't make things difficult for the other brothers, they're innocent. Chu Shifeng said stubbornly. You won't admit your wrongs even if you die? Wang Fei demanded. This subordinate didn't handle matters well and didn't keep an eye on the remnants of Western Qin. This subordinate deserves 10,000 deaths for his crimes. Chu Shifeng admitted in a low voice. Wang Fei was so angry that he unsheathed his sword. Finally, Chu Shifeng raised his head and declared, That woman is my East Qin's enemy. She's not my master, much less your Wang Fei. His Highness wanted him to admit his wrongs for defying his superiors and placing the Wang Fei under house arrest. He refused to admit it, even if he died. Very good, very good. Chu Shifeng, who told you that Han Yunxi was definitely a descendant of Western Qin's imperial clan. We didn't even find out where the rumors came from, so why do you believe them? Wang Fei asked. Chu Shifeng gaped. He'd been blinded by hatred and confused by Gu Beiyue's death. Why didn't he consider the truth of the rumors? Since when did you have the right to make decisions for your lordship? Depose the imperial concubine for your lordship? And since when did you find out that your lordship had long known about Han Yunxi's origins? Where did you get the guts to act on your own? Wang Fei was furious. Chu Shifeng, why don't you be the Duke of Qin? Chu Shifeng gave a start before realizing where he'd gone wrong. No matter what happened, he really had no right to act on his own. This was a taboo for subordinates, and a taboo for the Shadow Guard as well. The Shadow Guard had very clear rules. Anyone who disobeyed orders and acted on their own was to be killed without mercy. Your Highness, this subordinate. Chu Shifeng's attitude finally softened. Unfortunately, Wang Fei's eyes only grew colder. He closed his sword and used the scabbard to stab Chu Shifeng's dantian. His speed and strength were both swift and ruthless, leaving Chu Shifeng no chance to beg for mercy. Chu Shifeng's martial arts, which he'd cultivated over the past decade, were all ruined. Chu Shifeng spat out a mouthful of blood as he stared blankly at the master he'd served since childhood. Even now, he couldn't tell whether his master had destroyed his martial arts to save his life or to make him suffer a fate worse than death. Without his martial arts, he'd never be able to return to the Shadow Guard's ranks in this lifetime. Chu Shifeng wanted to see clearly and ask for clarification, but his vision quickly grew blurry and dim. In the end, he couldn't take the heavy injuries and fainted. Wang Fei didn't spare him a glance. Cold, he said, Someone come, send him back to Celestial Mountain. Pass down orders, no matter if it's the Shadow Guard, the army, or the Tang clan. Anyone who acts on their own and disobeys in public will be killed without mercy. Everyone grew taut. Su Donglin silently rejoiced. According to the Shadow Guard's rules, Chu Shifeng would have died, without a doubt. Although His Highness had destroyed Chu Shifeng's martial arts, at least he hadn't killed him. Instead, he'd sent him back to his training grounds. From today onwards, Su Donglin will assume the position of commander of the Shadow Guard. Wang Fei said. Su Donglin gave a start. Seeing his master's questioning gaze, he quickly stepped forward to express his thanks. Su Donglin, your lordship will give you 3 days to find the kidnappers. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences. Also, Send orders to the Tang clan to find out who spread the rumors and slandered Wang Fei. Long Fei added. Did this count as his last shred of calm and reason? Actually, this was forced out of him. He knew that he'd lost his mind the moment Han Yunqi disappeared. He'd rushed here like a madman, so he had no choice but to calm down. If he didn't, Han Yunqi would be in even more danger. His situation wouldn't be any better either. Chu Shifeng's hatred was already so deep, to say nothing of the Bailey army and Tang clan. Of course, he understood Chu Shifeng's hatred for Western Qin. He also knew that countless of his subordinates held an irreconcilable grudge against the Western Qin imperial clan. He'd not only hidden the truth from Han Yunqi, but everyone by his side as well, including Tang Li. Since there was no way to reconcile or forgive each other, it was better to never know. He'd long arranged everything, but never expected someone to know Han Yunqi's origins so thoroughly. They even knew about the Phoenix birthmark he didn't know about, and had even announced it to the public. Just who was this person? And who was the dark-robed assassin who tried to assassinate Gu Beiwei? Actually, he really did want to use Gu Beiwei, so he'd concealed his identity as a member of the East Qin imperial clan. But there was no way he'd try to assassinate Gu Beiwei. They'd long reached a consensus on Han Yunqi's origins. When he used the Lustbite energy on Celestial Mountain, he realized that Gu Beiwei had eyes and ears on the mountain as well. Moreover, Gu Beiwei knew that the Lustbite energy was the East Qin imperial clan's most precious treasure. Gu Beiwei had threatened him that if he didn't release Han Yunqi, he would use the power of Medical City to destroy the South Central Military Governor's manor. At that time, he realized that Gu Beiwei knew about Han Yunqi's origins. He confessed that he'd known about Han Yunqi's origins for a long time and asked Gu Beiwei why he'd hidden it even though he knew about Han Yunqi's origins. What were his intentions? Gu Beiwei didn't answer his question, but rather angrily accused him of using a woman's feelings, saying it wasn't the conduct of a man. He explained everything, but found that Gu Beiwei was the same as him. They both hoped that Han Yunqi would never know about the hatred and responsibility she carried and would always be herself. How could he, the East Qin crown prince, believe in the words of a descendant of the Shadow clan? How could it be easy for a descendant of the Shadow clan to reach a consensus with the East Qin crown prince? But as men who loved Han Yunqi, they understood each other's difficulties. Because they understood, they firmly believed. Why aren't you going to find her? Long Fei asked. Su Donglin didn't dare leave. He took several deep breaths before taking out the purple muslin robe hidden on his belt. Your Highness. Chapter 817. That's right. Su Donglin had ulterior motives. He was the one who insisted on writing a letter to His Highness Duke of Qin to tell him everything. As a subordinate, it was his duty. But Boss Chu had taken care of him since he was a child, so he couldn't bear to see him die in His Highness Duke of Qin's rage. Boss Chu was burdened with the hatred of his ancestors, so it was understandable that he'd made such a mistake. If His Highness Duke of Qin found out that esteemed Wang Fei had not only been kidnapped, but bullied as well, then Boss Chu would probably die a horrible death. Thus, he waited until Boss Chu was sent away before he took out the purple muslin robes with trembling hands. Your Highness, this is... Before he could finish, Long Fei Yi snatched the robes away. Han Yunqi had plenty of clothes, but only a few she often wore. Long Fei Yi recognized all of them, especially his favorite purple robes, only to see that the purple muslin coat had been torn to shreds and was no longer a garment. It was impossible to imagine how they'd been torn apart. Did they tear them apart after they were taken off, or after they were put on? Even more unimaginable was what the original owner of the robes had gone through. Long Fei's weary face instantly paled without a trace of blood. His hands were clearly trembling, as were his lips. What's going on? Su Donglin gave a start and didn't reply. He'd followed His Highness Duke of Qin for so long, but he'd never seen him like this. He assumed that His Highness Duke of Qin would be furious and kick him like Boss Chu, or even punish all of the Shadow Guard. But he never expected His Highness Duke of Qin to be afraid. Even if Cloud Realm continent fell into chaos, the skies collapsed, or the earth caved in, His Highness Duke of Qin wouldn't be afraid. However, at that very moment his entire body was trembling. Even breathing seemed to be difficult for him as his breathing grew heavier and heavier. Just what's going on? Long Fei roared. Su Donglin was so frightened that he almost jumped up. Your Highness, esteemed Wang Fei, Su Donglin was so frightened that he couldn't speak properly. What's going on?
Speak.
Long Fei Ye's angry roar resounded throughout the entire courtyard. If it wasn't for the fact that this courtyard had been restricted from entering, it was likely that it would have attracted a crowd of onlookers. For the sake of the unity of the East Qin faction and her safety, he could suppress his rage and force himself to face Chu Shifeng calmly. She'd handled the matter of Chu Shifeng beautifully. First, she'd misled the public so that the Tang clan and Bailey army wouldn't dare to make a move against Han Yunqi. Secondly, he'd used the excuse of investigating the person who'd spread the rumors to make the world question their authenticity. At the same time, he'd let Han Yunqi know that he hadn't known about her identity long ago, like Chu Shifeng had claimed. Although it was a lie, at least Han Yunqi wouldn't hate him at this critical juncture and misunderstand him. Third, he understood Chu Shifeng's hatred for Western Qin, which was the same as his own. Thus, he'd only crippled Chu Shifeng's martial arts and sent him back to Celestial Mountain instead of killing him. Not only did this serve as a warning to the restless East Qin factions, but it also prevented his subordinates from cursing him for being merciless. He'd already done his best to maintain his calm. But right now, his last bit of reason and composure had been completely shattered by the sight of the violet robe. Yes, if he'd seen the robe just then, Chu Shifeng would have died in his rage. The skies hadn't collapsed, the earth hadn't caved in, and Cloud Realm continent was perfectly fine. But his own world had collapsed. Han Yunqi, just what's wrong with you? Just what have you experienced? Where are you? Han Yunqi, are you afraid? Han Yunqi, do you know that your lordship will be afraid? Su Donglin finally realized that His Highness Duke of Qin had lost control and regretted bringing out the robe. If His Highness Duke of Qin lost control, who would control the situation? Your Highness, esteemed Wang Fei, is perfectly fine. Su Donglin shut his eyes and shouted. Your Highness, calm down, calm down. Esteemed Wang Fei is perfectly fine with you. At least that was enough to set his mind at ease. When he didn't hear His Highness Duke of Qin's voice for a long time, Su Donglin cautiously opened his eyes. But when he saw His Highness Duke of Qin's bloodshot and stubborn eyes, his heart skipped a beat. It hurt so much. Was this still His Highness Duke of Qin? He was desperately waiting for a glimmer of hope, a faint hope. Su Donglin had followed His Highness Duke of Qin since he was a child. In his eyes, His Highness Duke of Qin was always high and mighty, always devising strategies and never panicking in the face of danger. He'd never thought that this godlike man could have such a weak side. Su Donglin wished he could come up with a reason to save His Highness, but when he opened his mouth, he realized that he didn't know how to explain himself or how to persuade him. Even he didn't believe esteemed Wang Fei would be fine, so how was he supposed to convince His Highness Duke of Qin? When a woman was kidnapped and her clothes were torn to shreds, to say nothing of anything else, her kidnapper couldn't possibly be a good person. Her clothes were already torn off, so how could they stop here and not continue? Even if they didn't continue and kidnapped her, wouldn't that be, actually, His Highness Duke of Qin should have thought of this as well. His Highness shouldn't have been deceived by his comforting words. Seeing His Highness Duke of Qin like this made Su Donglin even more afraid. He was at a loss for what to do and almost burst into tears. At this moment, a figure suddenly flew down and rushed in front of Long Fei Yi. Big brother, you're finally here. It was Tang Li. He'd been here several times and knew everything that had happened, but he didn't have the right to make a decision for Long Fei Yi. This wasn't a small matter, but an enormous one. If Long Fei Yi didn't handle it properly, the East Qin camp would fall into disarray. not to mention others. Just his family's elders would have traveled day and night to interrogate Long Fei Yi. Big brother, I'm going crazy with worry. What's going on here? Tang Li was very agitated, but Long Fei Yi didn't even look at him. He stubbornly stared at Su Donglin and waited for Su Donglin. His deep eyes hid coldness, viciousness, and anticipation. Su Donglin finally broke down. Your Highness, this subordinate doesn't know what's going on either. Esteemed Wang Fei is blessed by the heavens and will definitely be fine. Long Fei Ye's eyes turned icy. Tang Li finally noticed that he was clutching Han Yunxi's violet muslin robes tightly in his hands. Tang Li immediately understood what was going on. Could it be that Han Yunxi isn't a descendant of Western Qin's imperial clan after all? Could it be that all the rumors in Cloud Realm Continent were just rumors? That's why Long Fei Yi was so anxious. If Han Yunxi was a descendant of Western Qin, then how could Long Fei Yi not hate her? But when he thought of Mute Granny and Gu Beiwei, Tang Li wavered again. Long Fei Yi might have long known about Han Yunxi's origins and kept it a secret from everyone, including his own little brother. Tang Li hadn't paid much attention to Ning Jing over the past few days either. Because of this, he was almost tangled up in his own thoughts. Su Donglin fell to the ground, too afraid to move. Long Fei Yi didn't make things difficult for him anymore. He looked at the familiar violet robes in his hands and suddenly turned to leave the courtyard. Big brother. Tang Li panicked and chased after him, but Long Fei Yi suddenly leapt onto the roof and fled like a madman. Big brother, wait for me. Where are you going? Tang Li chased after him, doing his best to run and fly behind Long Fei Yi, afraid that he'd lose him. Ever since he was young, Long Fei Yi had never lost control of himself except for Consort Wan's death. Even after Consort Wan committed suicide, Long Fei Yi had only chosen to keep quiet. He hadn't done anything out of line. But now Long Fei Yi was clearly out of control. Tang Li was worried that he'd do something impulsive and ruin all the efforts he'd put into restoring his country. Just what did Long Fei Yi want to do? Look for her, of course. What else could he do besides look for her? His only salvation was to find the person he was looking for. Just like that, Long Fei Yi, who hadn't slept or rested for several days, frantically searched through Medical City for an entire day and night. He'd looked everywhere he could find until the next morning. Finally, he dragged his exhausted body to the poison sect's forbidden grounds, to the cliff that Gu Beiwei had fallen off. Tang Li followed behind him. When he saw Long Fei Yi stop at the edge of the cliff, he finally sighed in relief. Tang Li was panting for breath. He was about to sit cross-legged when he suddenly thought of something and broke out in cold sweat. He rushed to Long Fei's side and grabbed his hand. Big bro, don't take things too hard. If sister-in-law knew that you jumped off, she'd definitely cry herself to death. Why would Long Fei Yi commit suicide? He didn't know why he'd come here either. Perhaps it was to find Gu Beiwei. He wanted to ask Gu Beiwei what he should do. He couldn't calm down at all and couldn't think straight. Tang Li, look for her. Help me find her. Search outside the city. Long Fei Yi finally looked at Tang Li. Big brother, how are we supposed to find her? The Shadow Guard and Medical City's guards have been searched multiple times over the past few days. What can we do outside the city? Are we going to search all over the mountains? Tang Li asked seriously. Even if we have to search the entire world, we still have to. Long Fei Yi said. Big brother, can't you calm down? Tang Li was furious. I can't. Long Fei Yi was telling the truth. Big brother, I can tell you who kidnapped her, but you have to answer a question of mine first. Tang Li looked into Long Fei Yi's eyes and was especially serious. Long Fei Yi also looked at him. He didn't allow Tang Li to ask, so he answered first. He said, that's right. Han Yunxi is a descendant of Western Qin. Will you help me? Tang Li was stunned at first, then he fiercely shook off Long Fei Yi's hand. You used me. You've been using me all this time. You didn't ask me to help you. You asked the Tang sect to help you. He always thought that Long Fei had only helped him become the Tang clan head because he disliked his father and Aunt Ru's prejudices against Han Yunqi. He wanted him to take the reins and strip them of their power. However, he never thought that Long Fei was worried that Han Yunqi's identity would be exposed one day and that the Tang sect would be out of his control. He was holding back. He was determined to be with the princess of Western Qin. Tang Li shook his head in disbelief. Big brother, you're crazy. She's the princess of Western Qin. The princess of Western Qin. If you don't give the Bailey army, the Tang sect, and the Shadow Guard an explanation, no one will continue to be loyal to you. Long Fei was indifferent to Tang Li's anger. He had already made up his mind when he kidnapped Mute Granny. No matter what, he wanted that woman. Ever since he was young, there was nothing that he truly wanted. There was only her. Tang Li, I'm only going to ask you once. Will you help me? Long Fei asked resolutely. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.